lots of pop culture references, loads of singers in the dialogue, characters just kind of hanging out. He loves all that, and as is always the case with Tarantino films, I'm never bored.
And it's got such a great atmosphere to it. It's one of those films where you can almost inhale it off the screen. You can almost smell that summer air.
It feels vibrant. It feels alive.
You watch a really good film, you leave the cinema and you feel like you're part of that world. There's no better feeling for me than that.
And I felt so knocked out by it, particularly how unexpected and funny the ending is and how much of a relief it was.
Yeah, it's great.
And none of us have really touched about on how violent this really is. It's horrendous violence.
Yeah.
And you're quite happy to see all of this violence play out, and I think that's Tarantino just basically given the finger to any single critic and just said his movies are too violent. Yeah, no matter how much you hate violence, you're going to love the end of this film.
All the right movies.
Hello and welcome to All the Right Movies, hippies and has-beens on acid-dipped rollies, and a podcast on classic and hit films.
That sums it up.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not even referencing the film there. That's just a coincidence.
No, that's absolutely true, yeah. Absolutely true.
This episode, though, it is going to be a trip, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, huge one.
It's DiCaprio and Tate together at last as we explore the Tarantino Tinseltown loving that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. You dig that?
Oh, I dig it, yeah.
Very much so.
Well, before we cruise down Hollywood Boulevard, should we talk about our own slice of showbiz on Patreon?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Well, if you're a regular listener to our ATRM Classic podcasts, you can help support what we do by becoming an ATRM patron. Patrons get exclusive access to our bonus podcast double feature, where we talk about movies that may not otherwise get the ATRM treatment, and the watch list, where we talk and review more modern releases.
Yep.
And you'll get access to our whole podcast archive, full of bonus episodes and archived ATRM Classic episodes. More content in there now than a double bill at the Van Nuys Drive-In.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, if Tarantino's your guy, we've got Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Inglourious Bastards all in there.
Yep.
Loads of other great episodes as well. So to find out more and sign up, please visit patreon.com/all the right movies. Or if you prefer, you can subscribe on YouTube for all those benefits, or on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for our archive.
There you go. Couldn't be easier now, could it?
Yep.
Couldn't be simpler.
It's a better deal you'd get from Marvin Schwartz, that's for sure.
Of course it is. Schwartz.
I think I said that right.
Yeah.
Back to the here and now, though.
Yeah.
Or rather, LA in 1969. And it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Your pick, Westy. So
My pick.
Why'd you put this one up?
Because I think it really needs to be talked about. It's a very divisive film, and I didn't think it was a divisive film. And it seems to have been since we put the poll up, which is quite interesting. I think it's very expansive. It's very self-indulgent, but I think it's self-indulgence done right. I think this is the way to do it. It looks beautiful, so I would just do it because of that, to be fair. There's so much scope, there's so much scale. It's a very personal film, I think, for Tarantino. You know, he doesn't really care if you like it or not, and I think that's really important. And it's got so much in it, it almost puts me off watching it sometimes. Like, kind of, I see it there and I'm thinking, shall I go? Yeah, it's really daunting.
Like a massive Chinese meal.
Yeah, there's no way I can stop halfway through this film. It's on, and it's got to be on for the full runtime, which I really love about it. It's just so self-assured, it's so self-aware, and it's a great picture. It's a really, really good picture, and I think that's what Tarantino wants this to be called. He doesn't want it to be called a movie. He doesn't want it to be called a film. He wants this to be called a picture, and it's fantastic. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, I remember when this was announced at the time. I knew it was Tarantino, obviously. I knew what it was called, that it was set in 60s Hollywood, and that it had Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead. And I was like, well, this sounds like the best film ever. Then it came out that it was about the Manson family and the Tate LaBianca murders. And I kind of thought, oh no.
So did I,
Yeah, so
I had visions of I shot Marvin in the face, that kind of tone. And I thought, cute, he's going to end his own career. He's finally gone too far.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, opening weekend, obviously, it's still Tarantino. There was nothing to worry about in the end. But all the way through, I had this sense of dread because we know what's coming. Or rather, we think we know what's coming. And as with any Tarantino film, so much to dig into. DiCaprio and Pitt for the first time. Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. Pacino in there. Ridiculous.
But fantastic. As well, do you remember when this was announced and you had that promo photo of Pitt and DiCaprio just in the outfits?
Great.
It was like, I'm watching that. I don't care.
Exactly. It's all-star. And that period in LA, a time of change, industry-wise, with new Hollywood coming along, culturally, with the counterculture, anti-war movements, and the Mansons, obviously. we'll be talking all those things, as well as analysing what we like or maybe we don't like so much from a filmmaking perspective, telling the story of how it was all made, and a tale or two about the real-life events. Nothing gruesome, though, don't worry.
No.
Yeah.
But it's going to be massive.
Really daunting.
And Matt, I know what you're like, so don't cry in front of the Mexicans,
I'll
but
try not to.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for you?
Away we go. Well, I mean, any Tarantino film is worth talking about simply because I don't think there's any middle ground with him or his films. It's very rare you get someone go, Tarantino, yeah, that was all right. This one, like Westy says, this one is so divisive. It puts people to polar extremes. Maybe my big Tarantino opinion, though, is that I've always preferred the latter part of his career. Like, I know Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, totally get why they're revered, and I do really like them, but they've never quite hit the mark in the same way for me. But you get to something like this, and I think there's so much going on here to unpack, so much that is a departure from his earlier films, and that's what I really respond to. It's always been up there for me because it feels like this is a film he's been building towards his whole career.
I think the tone works for you better. It's more of a traditional cinematic tone, isn't it?
Yes.
So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was produced by Columbia Pictures, Bona Film Group and Heyday Films, distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, and released on July the 26th, 2019. Filmed across Los Angeles, Hollywood and various locations in California. It was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino and stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Rick Dalton, Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, and Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate.
Yeah.
And a whole load of people who were nobodies at the time, but not for long. Yeah, it's mental.
It's mental, yeah. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
All right then, time to head to the valley, shall we?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
1969, the Hollywood dream is bursting as we talk the first act of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
The beginning.
Saturday, February 8th, 1969, Los Angeles was a time of change, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood drops us right in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. The moment we get to know our three main characters in Rick, Cliff and Sharon are coming. But first, the opening.
Makes sense.
So we kick off not in the movies, but on black and white TV.
Yeah.
Fading small screen star Rick Dalton is interviewed about Bounty Law, where he stars as Jay Cahill with his stuntman Cliff Booth. Then we're with Rick as he heads to the Musso and Frank Grill for a meeting with Hollywood agent Marvin Schwartz, not Schwartz,
No.
played by Al Pacino. We have a meeting with a very handsome cowboy man, and I don't just mean you, Matt. How was the opening, do we think?
It's a very playful opening, which I really like. DiCaprio absolutely looks the business in those opening Bounty Law moments, almost winking at the camera. And I love the recreation of those 60s types of interviews. Like, it's a bit stilted, it's a bit awkward. There's no need for the guy to be sitting in the chair turning around to look into the camera because it doesn't look natural at all, but that's how the 60s kind of interviews were. And I just love this instant sense of the two main characters here. Rick, he looks tense. He's nervously smoking. You can tell he's uptight about this. But Cliff, just casual as you like, completely comfortable here. And when he starts laughing at Rick saying he has fallen off a horse in the past, to me that almost feels like an outtake. Like, that's Brad Pitt laughing. It's not Cliff laughing. So it's a classic Tarantino opening. And any film that opens with a Wilhelm scream in the opening couple of minutes, that has my attention.
Absolutely. And we're straight in with the 4:3 aspect ratio for Bounty Law. It's black and white.
Yeah.
I always think it kind of feels like we're channel surfing and then stumble across this, which maybe
yeah.
is the idea. Mm-hmm. I think it's entertaining and pretty expertly sets up two key aspects of the film, the setting and the core character relationship. I think the Bounty Law clips are really good. They feel really authentic to me.
Yeah.
That is a nice Wilhelm scream in there. Lovely Dick Van Dyke reference as well.
Yeah, great.
And the interview portion works because it shows us the dynamic between Rick and Cliff right off the bat. The first question is about Cliff, but directed at Rick.
Yeah.
Rick's the one who wants to talk, but Cliff's the one worth talking about. And Cliff, it seems like he doesn't care about anything. And as we'll find out, he pretty much doesn't.
Yeah.
And then we'll go straight into that opening credits montage. Treat Her Right by Roy Head playing.
Yeah.
Sharon Tate dancing on the Pan Am flight. Tarantino's love for the period just leaps off the screen immediately,
totally.
but never compromises the reality. And that's something that carries on for the whole film, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice bit of storytelling and clever setup, establishes the era and the characters in just a few minutes. I mean, Tarantino firing on all cylinders out the gate. When's he not? He loves a big opening.
Yeah, of course he does. And talking about openings, before the film starts, the Columbia Pictures studio logo we see is one from 1969 when the film was set. It wasn't recreated, it was from 1969, so the the scratched and faded look is for real.
I love it when studios do that.
Yeah, so do I.
and Screen Gems, who were the TV arm of Columbia at the time. They get a couple of name checks as well.
Yeah.
There's so much detail in this film. We'll talk about a lot of it. It's crazy.
It's mind-boggling. My notes are the most substantial I've ever made.
Mine are as well.
It's ridiculous.
And there are a couple of classic Tarantino pop culture references in the opening at Rick's. Because when Tarantino was scouting for locations, he visited the home of Lee Van Cleef in LA. Now, Van Cleef had died in 1989, but his widow showed Tarantino around. And he said it was like a 60s time capsule and inspired Rick's home in the film. So in the garage, Van Cleef had a huge painting of his own face, which is why Rick Dalton has a huge picture of his own face on his driveway.
That is funny. Huge painting of his own face.
Yeah. It's just propped up with like breeze blocks, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
temporary.
But Lee Van Cleef in The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, wasn't he, obviously? I mean, spaghetti
Yeah.
westerns, one of Tarantino's biggest influences, always have been, really, and this film's no different.
I've got one in my garage, just no one's ever seen it. It's my face.
I'm coming round after this.
Come round. It's ridiculous.
And what we also see here is Rick has a framed copy of Mad magazine with himself on the front cover. Now, Tarantino went to Mad and asked them to create a cover in the style of Jack Davis, who was one of their main artists in the 60s.
Yeah, and then Mad, they released a special Tarantino-inspired issue with Rick Dalton on the cover.
Right.
But that's some serious attention to detail, though, down to like the specific
mental,
artist style.
Yeah.
Only Tarantino's asking for that.
Yeah. In the interview as well, Tarantino said that he designed that, like with a guy with a finger up his nose, and it was
Right.
the last ever physical cover of Mad ever designed.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
By Tarantino, yeah.
Wow, awesome.
It was all reprints after that, so that
Yeah.
was the last one.
Right, brilliant.
So straight after that, we're in there. Pacino just turns up. It's wonderful. Gina, the face in the misty light. Absolutely love it. He's a bit creepy, but wonderful because I
pulls
don't
it
think
off. Yeah.
no
He
one
does
else could have.
Yeah.
And it's just, for me, this is the sequence where you realise Tarantino is there's a part of him in every single character in this whole film.
Yeah.
It's like he's talking to himself, just little elements of it. I just love the uncomfortableness here from DiCaprio, how he's just stutters his way through it a little bit, and he's just like getting the name wrong, and then he's like,
Yeah.
it's a good picture.
Yeah.
He's really uncomfortable for some reason, and it's just offset, which is great. But this, like, the Tanner reference and the 14 Fists of McCluskey and the way that Pacino talks about his screening room, and he's just like, his
Yeah.
wife's gone to bed and we love westerns, and we're just sitting there. It's like, that's what Tarantino does.
Yeah.
Of course it
He's
is.
got his screening room, and he's like, and then I lit a Havana, I bought a cognac, and I watched 15 Fists of McCluskey. What a picture. Loads of fun, all the killing. It's like 14 Fists of McCluskey. He sets fire to like 8 Nazis with a flamethrower, and it's 7 minutes, 40 seconds into this film that we see that. It's like he's totally setting it up. And you think this is all just played out for fun, you know, like the opening of Reservoir Dogs, which doesn't really have much reference to the
Yeah.
plot, but it kind of does because there's elements of the characters in there, but it's much more subtle.
Yeah.
This lays out the whole film. It tells you that Rick's a fading artist. He's not
Yeah.
going to make it. He's got to go to Italy, or he's going to fail. He's going to be this. He's going to be terrible. He's going to be the bad guy. He's going to be the comedy foil. He's losing everything. And from that, you go, well, hold on, he's just set up the whole film here, and I didn't even realise he did. It's an absolutely wonderful way to start it because he's just taking the audience on a little joyride, but you're learning so much. It's like having a really good teacher at school, and you learn through playing, and you don't realise you've learned everything. It's like that. You've learned the plot, but you don't quite know how. You don't quite remember how.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Pacino as Marvin. Down goes you, down goes your career. It's like he just wandered in from Heat. Like, ping, kapow, zoom. He's absolutely nuts. Is it me? Or does Pacino almost seem like he doesn't know his lines that well? And he's still brilliant.
Yeah, he's just got a lid on him. It is the same as Heat, but like Tarantino's put this lid on him and just like stops him erupting a little bit, but he's great.
He's like born to act, Pacino.
Yeah,
but I mean,
wonderful.
narratively, in terms of Rick, it is a key scene. After we've just seen like the cool, calm, and collected Rick in Bounty Law, we now see kind of the real Rick. Slightly awkward. He does stutter a bit. He gets Marvin Shaw's name wrong and gets the reality check about his career and where it's headed. And it's a bit of a trope in Hollywood set films, the fading star getting a shot at redemption. But I mean, not with Italian westerns normally.
No.
Not normally. Not then, anyway.
And two of the things that kind of get set up here as well that I'm a fan of. Firstly, I like the cutaway kind of storytelling Tarantino uses. It's something
Yeah.
you see in animations quite a lot. He does it throughout the film, but the first one's here when we cut to Rick arrested for drink driving, and Kurt
Yeah.
Russell's narration's
voiceover,
like,
yeah.
that's a big fucking lie. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And how stunning are the cars? unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about the motors as we go, but
Yeah.
geez, they like the visuals for the film kind of in microcosm. Huge, beautiful, really authentic looking and dripping with nostalgia.
And everything's clean. Everything's
Yeah.
like, you just want to be there. It's like a painting. There's nothing wrong with this sequence at all. There's nothing wrong with this setting or this scene. There's nothing negative. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place.
It's a stunning looking place, absolutely, yeah.
And Tarantino said when he was writing the script, he was picturing Al Pacino as Marvin. So always wanted him. And he accepted straight away, of course he did. And Tarantino said once he started shooting, he didn't want to stop because Pacino and DiCaprio were just so good together. And you can see that's electric.
I'd love to have been on that set.
Yeah,
great. Unbelievable. It is great seeing them on the screen together. I mean, for Pacino, towards the end of his career, small role, working with Tarantino, which he knows it's been written for him, a no-brainer to do it, surely.
Oh, easy. I doubt he even read it.
Exactly, yeah. And then Marvin in his huge screening room watching movies, drinking brandy. That's the life, surely.
What I love about this scene and what this film absolutely nails is all the films within the film look great.
Brilliant.
Like, I definitely want to see the 14 Fists of McCluskey. And
I want to watch Bounty Law like every night.
I do. Just a double bill of that. Looks amazing. And I know for that, Tarantino was inspired by a Roger Corman war film called The Secret Invasion. And Tarantino, obviously, later said he worked it all out in his head anyway. So it was directed by Paul Wendkos and starred Van Johnson, Rod Taylor, Sal Mineo, and Verna Lisi alongside Rick.
Yeah, Tarantino clearly had a whale of a time writing and filming all these genre pictures. Yeah, great. Setting a load of Nazis on fire straight away, and obviously sets up the finale really well.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Chekhov's flamethrower.
So the flamethrower wasn't a CGI effect, it was real, as with everything Tarantino does, to be fair. It's all in camera. DiCaprio was taught how to use it, and the stunt actors were set on fire for real. The stunt coordinators were Zoe Bell, who's from Death Proof and Kill Bill, and Robert Alonso. And they had to convince DiCaprio it was safe, and the stunt actors were okay with it.
Yeah, it does look crazy, them seeing them all flaming the fireballs.
Yeah, I think he's having a great time by the end of it.
I don't blame him. That's the acting job you want, isn't it? Setting fire to stuff.
Yeah, especially Nazis.
Exactly, yeah. And that scene where Rick's being taught to use the flamethrower and he says, anything we can do about that heat? And the guy's like, Rick, it's a flamethrower. Yeah. DiCaprio said that line for real during training, and Tarantino thought it was funny and put it into the script.
And another line that wasn't in the original script was Cliff saying to Rick, "You're Rick Dalton. Don't you forget it." Because Brad Pitt told Tarantino about when he was a young actor in the early 90s, and a guy who he knew at the time used to say to him, "You're Brad Pitt. Don't forget it." And he said it gave him a boost, so it was added to the film.
Nice.
Yeah, I might start doing that to myself. Doesn't sound quite as good.
People might think you're a bit crazy if they overhear you doing it as well. You can't Barker. What?
But it becomes quite an important line later as well, I think. After he nails the monologue that we'll talk about, Rick says to himself, Rick fucking Dalton. Feels quite powerful when he does it.
Yeah, it's great, yeah.
And that's the opening to the film. We've met Rick and Cliff, and Marvin, obviously. Mm-hmm. Should we meet Sharon Tate as well?
Let's do it.
I think we should.
The setup complete, we follow Rick and Cliff into their daily lives. We see what they get up to when they're not together, and then see how the other half live when we meet Rick's neighbour, actress Sharon Tate, and follow her to a party at Hugh Hefner's place. The Playboy Mansion or a trailer in the grounds of a drive-in. Which is better, Matt?
Do you know what? It's the drive-in for me, because this is the only time I'll ever compare myself to Brad Pitt, so I'm going to make the most of it, because this feels like my life. I finish work, I stick the TV on, and I feed the dog, and that's it. That's my night, done. I think this is just a wonderful little scene, because on the face of it, it doesn't look like a particularly pleasant experience. It's pretty scruffy, but Cliff doesn't care. He's so comfortable in his own skin and in his own life. He's got all he needs. And then you contrast that to Rick, who is living in a mansion, but he's just unable to enjoy all the trappings of it and all the wealth that he has. And you have to talk about Brandy here, Cliff's dog. I mean, she is a very good girl indeed, this dog. And Brad Pitt is so good, he can even generate chemistry with the dog. It's really funny when he's telling her that he's going to throw food out if she keeps whining. He doesn't want to, but he'll do it. That's really funny. And then when you cut back to her licking her chops and wagging her tail in excitement, like,
I love
this is top 5 cinematic dogs here. Brandy's amazing. Unsung hero of the film for me. And it obviously sets Brandy up for the end. But this whole scene, it just sums up part of the film's charm for me, which is just spending time hanging out with these characters. I love these little insights into their lives.
great. It's excellent as well that he lives behind the drive-in movie theatre, so he lives behind the scenes.
Yeah, the contrast between Rick and Cliff's lives, I think it's drawn out really well. Rick's sitting with a tape recorder, which would have been state-of-the-art at the time, to learn his lines for Lancer. He's trying to keep his career afloat while literally floating in his pool, which is nice. Whereas Cliff in the trailer, pasta straight from the pan. And it's not the Ritz, but he seems perfectly content watching
he's so
TV,
happy.
Yeah, beer, Brandy's in there. How much food does he give Brandy? Wolf's tooth, 2 cans.
Too much. Too much.
And there's some great visual storytelling. A great touch is that Rick's posters in his house are all pictures from films he's been in.
Yeah.
So he doesn't love movies or its history. He's just kind of getting from it what he can.
Yeah.
Still great to see them, though, was the role in that classic 50s, 60s illustrated style. And Cliff arrives at Rick's in the Cadillac and then leaves in the beat-up Volkswagen, which is another nice detail.
That's a great detail, yeah.
And he's like Nicky Lauda down Hollywood Boulevard. Unbelievable. Great character storytelling, loads of it visual from Tarantino.
The Van Nuys Drive-In was a real movie theatre in the 1960s, but was demolished in the late 90s. Tarantino had recreated it for the film, and what we see is a combination of a life-size set and miniatures.
That crane shot as we follow Cliff into the drive-in where it lives, and then the camera moves up and over the marquee.
I always think that shot ends when you just get the projector light going into the camera.
Yeah.
I always think, that's the end of that scene, and then it keeps going. I keep forgetting about it. That uses that darkness.
Yeah, that was the miniature that would go over, obviously. It's brilliant. And in contrast to Rick, who has pictures of himself everywhere, Cliff's got a huge picture on his wall of Anne Francis from Forbidden Planet. Yeah. I think Tarantino's a fan. I've heard him mention it a few times in interviews.
Right. So as we've mentioned, Cliff drives 2 cars in the film, and there's a story behind both. The car he drives Rick around in is a 1966 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and that actually belonged to Michael Madsen, and it's actually the same car Mr. Blonde drives in Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs it is, isn't it? Yeah, great.
Yeah. No cop tied up in the boot this time, hopefully.
No,
well, when I checked it. I thought when he gets the spare out, it's Barn Ranch. I thought it was going to be cops fall out the back.
And Michael Madsen's in Bounty Law as well, isn't he? Has a cameo.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I think the reason he's in there is because he always said to Tarantino, I die in all of your films, because he dies in Hateful Eight as well. He's like, I'll get you in where you don't die then.
Oh, nice. Nice. And then Cliff's own car, that's a blue 1964 Volkswagen Carmen Gia convertible. And that was the car Tarantino's stepfather used to drive when he was a kid in the late 60s.
I prefer that one,
It's beautiful.
It is nice, like.
It's lovely.
Yeah. Well, Tarantino said that the shots in Cliff's car looking up at him from the passenger seat were done that way because that was how QT used to see his own stepdad as a kid.
Right.
Wow.
Which is nice.
Speeding.
Probably, yeah.
Then after that, we get the other side of the coin and we get to go to the Playboy Mansion. This is just pure Tarantino vibes for me. It's just so elevated, but it's so lavish. But at the same time, we're just focusing on these few characters, these 3 characters, as they're moving through this lavish party. And Margot Robbie's moves are just, I can imagine, I'm so pleased we haven't got behind the scenes footage of this like we have on Pulp Fiction, where he's dancing. But I'm sure there'll be something somewhere where he's behind the camera and he's just doing this.
100%.
Do this. He's like with his shoes off. And you can tell he's just moving through and it's just exactly what's in his head. And until it says the Playboy Mansion in the Playboy font, which is wonderful. You don't really know. There could be anywhere. It's just a lavish, this big lavish party. They don't make a big deal out of it being the Playboy Mansion necessarily. They just make it a big deal out of it being so over the top and a bit pointless and a bit lavish. But you do get some great cameos here. I say cameos, I'd love to say it's Steve McQueen, but you get Lewis playing McQueen, which I think is a kind of a parody of McQueen. I don't think he's trying to be exactly the same as him, and I don't think that's what we're looking for all the way through the film. I think it is a once upon a time. It is like a comic book version of these people. I think Lewis does really well. But again, is this scene necessary? Of course it is. Is it drawn out and over the top and lavish for no reason? Of course it is. But does it have plot points? Of course it does. And you learn about these 3 characters through other people as they're talking about, and he married her, and then to him, and then to that. And he's like, oh, she likes, small guys who have got these, like, I never stood a chance. I love that delivery. That's pure McQueen. If he's going to nail any of it, it's just when he smokes and obviously he's backlit, the smoke comes up and he's like, I never stood a chance. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But that crane shot, when it comes in and it's just moving through
unbelievable.
Everything, it's just like, how much ambition do you need? Because like this one scene in any other film would just be like, that's enough. That's the middle. That's the party scene.
Yeah.
Let's get the crane in there. But he puts a crane in there over a trailer to feed a dog. It's the same at the Playboy Mansion. Absolutely love it. I love the ambition of this film, and it really pays off.
It does. Some party. Steve McQueen, the Mamas and the Papas, Connie Stevens and Jay Sebring are already there, and then Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski turn up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Hugh Hefner didn't buy that Playboy Mansion until 1971, which Tarantino would have known, so it's there for atmospheric reasons, I think.
Right.
But
Okay.
Sharon is like an instant delight.
Yes,
Life
yes.
and soul of the party. But this scene hits differently on rewatches, because the first time seeing this, I thought it was quite sad, seeing Sharon dancing, having a great time,
Yeah.
thinking we know what's coming. Now knowing what is to come, it's just a great party.
It's just a joy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does look incredible. That crane shot is insane by the pool.
Yeah.
The fashions of the 60s and the costume design is just an absolute treat. Ariana Phillips was the costume designer. Her work is superb all the way through.
Oh, yeah. Everyone, even
Yeah.
the extras. Somebody out of focus in the background still looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I mean, Tarantino's clearly in love with the period and knows the period. I find it all pretty intoxicating because I love that period as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, he's just in love with cinema. He's just in love with the idealism of it, and this is it. It's totally idealized.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And talking about the costume design, when we see Sharon and Roman Polanski on the way to the party, she's wearing a snakeskin coat, and it was based on an identical coat that the real Sharon wore at the premiere of Rosemary's Baby, one of Polanski's most famous films. Snakeskin coat, yes.
Yeah. Another great crane shot when the camera moves from Rick in the pool over the roof to Sharon
Yeah.
Polanski
Yeah.
leaving the house. Incredible. I guess all these crane shots are to illustrate the point that in Hollywood, everyone is small fry. Nobody matters really because it's such a big place, possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Or it's kind of like just the dreamlike sense of it, the once upon a timeness of it, the kind of we can float between all of these sequences, and we've got access to all of Hollywood. Because if you look at something from the top, you have access to all of it.
It does have a very, very, very fairy tale feel, doesn't it?
And Damien Lewis said Tarantino contacted him about being in the film and told him, "I've always thought, man, you'd be a great Steve McQueen." And the reason McQueen is there is because a lot of Rick Dalton's career is based on McQueen's. And apparently the night that the real Sharon Tate was killed, Steve McQueen had been invited along, but it changed his mind.
Yeah, Jay Sebring was a celebrity hairdresser. He was McQueen's hairdresser, and he knew him and invited him to Sharon Tate's.
That's
Yeah.
Emil Hirsch in the film, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And McQueen was going to go until he said he got an offer from a beautiful blonde woman, obviously.
Obviously.
But yeah, Steve McQueen was on the Manson's hit list, apparently,
Gosh,
with Frank Sinatra and Liz Taylor.
Speaking of the Mansons, it's around this time when we see them for the first time, when they're dumpster diving for food, and Pussycat, played by Margaret Qualley, who nobody knew then but everyone knows now, sees Cliff and gives the peace sign. The song they're singing is called I'll Never Say Never to Always. It was written by Charles Manson, of all people, who saw himself as a bit of a singer-songwriter.
I saw an interview with Mary Ramos, Tarantino's go-to music supervisor, and she said that they made sure the royalties for using that song went to a trust set up for the victims of the Mansons before they licensed it.
Oh, wow.
So that's a setup for our fairy tale. Playboy parties, a Hollywood in transition, and the fading and rising stars caught in the middle. Time to talk about the guy behind it all, do you think?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
The director.
The director's chair for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was occupied by the one and only Quentin Tarantino. He'd already been a household name for 25 years by this point, and this was his 9th feature film, coming directly after 2 westerns in Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight. A shift in genre, Matt, slightly, but
Just a bit.
still a Tarantino film. How's his directing here?
I think he's made just such a great hangout movie, and the plot takes such a backseat at times because he just wants us to hang out with the characters and he wants to luxuriate in this very specific time period. There's like no hurry to this film whatsoever. He just wants us to absorb it all, and it's got such a great atmosphere to it. It's one of those films where you can almost inhale it off the screen. You can almost smell that summer air. And I think that's a risky strategy, making a film with such a relaxed vibe to it, because you run the risk of being called self-indulgent with it. And obviously he does get that criticism with this one in particular, I think, and that's fine. I get that criticism, but it just really works for me because I do feel very much transported back to the late 60s, not just the costumes and the soundtrack choices, but the feel of it, which is very hard to do without coming across like a parody of something, which I think this never feels like a parody. And yet amongst that harmonious, like Summer of Love vibe to it, there's still that tension. Whenever he cuts to any of the Manson family, it just adds a little shiver, like, oh yeah, this is in the background. And as we've said at the top, the amount of times you think, oh, I know what's coming now.
Yeah.
But to make those two contrasting tones work, I think it requires a lot of maturity, and I think this is what I really enjoy about his later films. There's a maturity to them. It's not enough for him anymore to just write like cool dialogue and characters anymore, and I think this film really sums that up.
I agree. I think one of my favourite things about Tarantino is his identity as a filmmaker. You can spot his films way off, always. And there's a lot of stuff here that ties in with that. The attention to detail, referencing popular culture, is second to none. Cliff in his trailer shouldn't be interesting, but he opened his cupboard, and you know Tarantino's handpicked every tin of food in there.
He absolutely has, yeah.
The soundtrack's classic Tarantino, the visuals are as well. We'll talk about those in a bit. But what I think is a bit more unique here is I think this might be Tarantino's most personal film, like we've said.
Yeah.
He was born in Tennessee, Tarantino, but grew up in Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s, so he knows this place and time inside out. And it shows the recreation of LA is like meticulous, from the cars to the clothes to the music, the buildings, all of it. It's nostalgic, but never feels like a museum piece. It feels vibrant. It feels alive, without avoiding the shady parts of Hollywood. The underbelly's there as well. And Tarantino fuses those two extremes together, I think, really well. It comes from every aspect of the filmmaking, and we'll talk about all of it, but I feel totally transported to the 60s watching this. I think one of the great things movies can do is provide escapism, and if it can take you to another time and place and feel like you're there, that's a special thing, I think. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does that, to me. The only thing is, I kind of want more. I want to see more of the world. We get the parties and the sets and the cars, but I want all of it. I want to see the pictures and the writers' rooms and the studio heads and the crazy directors. Tarantino's take on all that with the real people as characters, I'd have loved it. But I do respect the approach and how he's made the film he wanted to make, as he always does. And yeah, Matt, you're right. Some people do say this is self-indulgent. And yeah, I mean, isn't most art kind of self-indulgent? You making a point or sending a message that means something to you? I see it's personal, and I'm all here for it. And I think this is a film that only Tarantino could have made. The only thing is, I can't believe he didn't put himself in it. He loves a cameo, usually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same as you guys, but I think what I get from this is that he doesn't take you to the 60s, he brings it to you. And I think that's the difference. He presents it and he's kind of going, you can come in if you want to. But he doesn't take you anyway. He doesn't drag you kicking and screaming.
It's his 60s, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, he brings the old LA to you, and you get to leave there and walk away as Sharon Tate did when she left her screening, and just have that kind of, you're walking on air. You know, if you watch a really good film, you leave the cinema and you feel like you're part of that world. There's no better feeling for me than that. And I think that's what he does. And when I'm watching it, every single element of this is Tarantino. Every single element of this is so carefully put through his sieve of like creativity. And that's what he does. But he does that especially well with the dialogue. He doesn't make it too Tarantino. He doesn't make it too of the time. He doesn't make it too obvious. Everything works really well with that. And to deliver that dialogue, the cast that he's built here is just stupidly good. I mean, I know we're going to go into it later, but his eye for talent is beyond compare. Not only for new talent, which we'll talk about. I mean, Austin Butler, Margaret Qualley, we've already kind of, seen what they can do, right?
Yeah.
But he's bringing back Luke Perry, and you see that in the credits, and you're thinking, what's he going to do with Luke Perry? What's he going to do with Timothy Oliphant? Who I've just seen in The Crazies, and he can't really do much in that. So what's he going to do with these guys? Michael Madsen, again, what's he going to do? But it's joyous. Timothy Oliphant has never been, but he's wonderful, and I totally buy him. As Tanner, I totally buy him. It's just in that role. It totally works. Luke Perry coming back, the guy who was in the war with the English. Yeah, of course he was. Look at him. It works perfectly. His eye for detail and his eye to be able to create that, and his sense of self-worth, I think, comes across in this. It's not self-indulgence, it's self-worth, and he knows what he loves, and he believes in what he loves, and he puts that in front of you and says, if you don't like that, I don't care. And that's the best thing I get out of this film.
Totally. He makes what he wants to make, doesn't he? 100%, as it should be.
So Tarantino was planning to make the film with the Weinstein Company, because all of his films since Pulp Fiction had been produced by companies owned by Harvey Weinstein. But since the outcry that led to the Me Too movement, Tarantino severed ties with Weinstein.
Yeah, well, of course he did.
Yeah.
There's a Tarantino interview with Charlie Rose around Pulp Fiction time, where he's like the hottest filmmaker in Hollywood, and he says any film he makes is always influenced by what's going on in his life personally at the time. So at the time of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was on the fringes of the Harvey Weinstein scandal, and I wonder how much of Tarantino's writing of what happened to Sharon Tate is him wishing he could go back and do some things differently, maybe.
Maybe.
So Tarantino's next film was up for grabs, and pretty much every studio wanted it. Tarantino took it to David Heyman, who owned Heyday Films, and they pitched it round with Sony getting the rights after agreeing to a $100 million budget.
Yeah, blockbuster numbers, them.
Yeah.
I know David Heyman produced every Harry Potter film, so I wonder if that's why Tarantino approached him. He knows how to work a huge budget.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. And also, Tarantino got total and final cut on everything from script to hiring to final edit.
And he got 25% of the first dollar back end as well, which is a huge amount.
Did right there. Yeah.
Quarter.
And then apparently after 20 years, all the rights to the film will pass back to Tarantino.
Mental. How many directors ever could basically just tell the studio, this is the deal, this is what you're signing?
Yeah,
Yeah, not many.
yeah.
And Tarantino wanted the film to look 100% authentic, so hired Barbara Ling as the production designer. He'd not worked with her before, but she also grew up in LA in the 60s and knew the setting. She worked on some 60s set films before, like The Doors, and she brought in Nancy here, who she called the greatest set dresser in Hollywood. I can't argue with any of that. It all looks incredible. This is what you spend $100 million on.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is, yeah.
You just recreated 4 blocks worth.
100%, yeah. She was also production designer on Batman and Robin, Barbara Ling. Not sure if that was a factor in Tarantino's decision.
No.
Is that why it's not in my notes? I
Nipples
just
on the
missed that
back
bit out.
Yeah.
The Doors, that's fine.
But the production design work, it is just like, wow, as good as it gets.
Yeah, production design on Batman and Robin's actually brilliant. It's everything else that's wrong.
I was talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but yeah, on that as well.
Let's do Batman and Robin next.
And lots of the places that Tarantino wanted to feature in the film had been torn down. So Barbara Ling had to recreate a lot of it. So we've mentioned the Van Nuys drive-in, but also Tarantino had wanted to feature Pandora's Box because that was a famous club on the Sunset Strip, which had been demolished. And Ling had it recreated in a restaurant called Joseph's Cafe.
It was a famous hippie hangout in the 60s, I think, Pandora's Box. It was actually gone by 1969. I think 66, 67 it got demolished.
Right.
So a bit anachronistic, like the Playboy Mansion.
And then near the start of the film, we see a huge mural of James Dean starring in Giant. And that wasn't a recreation, but it was based on the fact that building walls in 60s LA were often decorated with murals from classic movies.
Yeah, we're seeing that scene we talked about with the Manson girls. They walk right past that mural. That's a great shot, that.
And in recreating 1960s Hollywood Boulevard, Ling spoke to all the vendors who owned the premises and arranged with them to change the facades back to how they'd looked 50 years earlier. She said that after filming, most of them actually chose to keep them as they were because they preferred them that way.
Nice.
Yeah, a free Barbara Ling makeover for your shop. That's not a bad deal, is it?
Replacing the neon. Yes, thanks very much.
To shoot the Bounty Law feature we talked about, Ling had a whole Western set created. It was painted to look at its best when shot in black and white because that's what the old TV shows used to do back in the day.
Yeah, it's got all the grey tones, hasn't it? Like all the darks in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think Tarantino said one of his proudest moments in his career was how authentic Bounty Law looks. It does look really good.
Yeah, really
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, really does.
Have you seen behind-the-scenes footage of Hollywood Boulevard during filming? It's mind-blowing, the lengths they went to. Clothes shops fitted out with fashions from the time, coffee shops decorated outside and inside, even though we don't see inside, benches with ads on for TV shows playing that night, there's newsstands full of like magazines from the time, hundreds of extras walking around with the clothes and the haircuts of the time. Like everywhere you turn, it's 1969.
Yeah.
Tarantino was loving it, obviously.
Of course he is. Just wants to live there,
Dancing
doesn't
in the
he?
middle of the street.
He's walking down Hollywood Boulevard smoking Hans Lander's huge pipe.
Amazing.
I mean, why wouldn't you, to be fair?
Yeah. The only thing that's not authentic to the 60s. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And staying on that and keeping things authentic and classic, there was a no phones rule. So Timothy Oliphant, who plays James Stacey, who we spoke about, who starred in Lancer, he said Tarantino had strict rules on the set. Mobile phones were banned, and anybody caught using one would be immediately fired.
Wow.
He said at one point during filming, a crew member's phone went off and they just took off running in the other direction, didn't come back.
Imagine getting chased down Sunset Strip by Tarantino smoking Hans Lander's pipe. Crazy.
Imagine upsetting somebody who's got this big of a vision, though, just because your phone went off. Like, it's never going to happen, is it? That's got to be heartbreaking.
But he's all over his sets, Tarantino, isn't he? Have you seen when he has his crew chant, "We love making movies"?
Yeah, after the end of every shot, I think, or the start of every shot.
That's on the behind-the-scenes stuff, yeah. It's like us before every episode, we chant, "We love making podcasts," don't we?
We do. Absolutely.
Ray, you're chanting.
Well, before we end on QT, it's time for our first ATRM Patreon question. So, as well as all the great benefits we highlighted at the start, another perk of becoming an ATRM patron is we will answer your questions on the show. Time for the first of those now, and it comes from Burke Swenson.
Hello, Burke.
Hello, Burke.
So Burke says, "Hello, gents. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood became my favourite QT film after a single watch, which was unexpected after so many great hits. Beyond an amazing cast and storyline, what struck me was how authentic the production design was. What other films do you feel have done an exceptional job of creating authentic settings?" Then Burke says, "Thanks as always for all you do."
God bless him.
Thank you, Burke.
Thanks, mate.
I was really inspired by this film to go down a similar vein, so American Graffiti came to mind. We don't often give George Lucas a lot of credit on this, but I do think his recreation of that time period is immaculate and the soundtrack's
Brilliant,
amazing. Similar vein, I would say Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson,
nice, yeah.
the way he
Nice.
recreates the 70s, just totally takes you into that period. And then kind of the opposite of that, really, in terms of tone, but I'd also say Inside Llewyn Davis. Just that 1961 vibe of Greenwich Village. I mean, that film feels so cold. It's set in February, I think. And
It's grey, that film.
it's
isn't it?
grey, but
Grey
it
and
looks
blue.
amazing at the same time. So much more convincing than A Complete Unknown. I think it nails the aesthetic of that brilliantly.
Yeah, there's several spring to mind for me. Another DiCaprio film, The Aviator, has great attention to period details set in the 30s, 40s, 50s. I wouldn't call this authentic, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy, a blend of
It's
miniatures.
authentic, Middle Earth. It's exactly the same as I imagined it.
Exactly. Yeah, bigger chest, huge set. Stunning work to create Middle Earth. Not a real place, but it kind of feels like it is when you watch it.
Yeah.
I'd also say Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson, which is a visual feast with its perfectly
nice.
crafted,
Yeah,
huge,
yeah,
colourful
really
sets.
is.
And one that always comes to mind for me for great production design is probably 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
The Dawn of Man, through the 3 million year cut to the future, all still looks incredible and was light years ahead of its time in 1968. So I'd probably go for that.
Yeah, I mean, very much the same. The one that blew me away that I didn't realise until much, much later was Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, yeah.
Shot in London.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
What? Is it
The gas
Vietnam?
plant,
Yeah, that totally blew my mind, like all of it. Zodiac, I think, really sticks with me to set that period. I think the production down of that is amazing, and the way that they mix the CGI with the production design as well,
Really
I think
good.
it's really, really good. But the one that's always going to win for me is Blade Runner. I think I'd never seen anything like that, and just walking through them streets, and you just think that's just incredible.
Yeah,
That's
world building. And that's up there, isn't
Just
it?
the whole thing is just mind blowing. I haven't seen anything like it since.
Well, Tarantino was nominated for Best Director at the Oscars that year for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and the film was nominated for Best Picture. Do you know who and what won that year?
1917 got best cinematography. I know that much.
So I think it was Parasite, wasn't it? And Bong Joon-ho won director.
Yes,
Correct on both counts, Matt.
Yeah.
Parasite, the first non-English language film to win the top prize at the Oscars.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
As for Tarantino, though, and his work on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, still crazy and impressive after all these years.
For all these years, lovely. Yeah, very much so.
The cast.
Quentin Tarantino was already a Hollywood legend by the time he made Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he assembled a cast to match. We're going to be talking about Brad Pitt as mysterious stuntman Cliff Booth and Margot Robbie as rising Hollywood starlet Sharon Tate. We're going to start with the falling star, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Leonardo DiCaprio is Rick Dalton, an actor struggling to stay relevant in a changing Hollywood. The story follows Rick as he navigates the ups and downs of his career, leans on loyal friend and stunt double Cliff Booth, and ultimately finds himself face to face with the family on August the 8th, 1969.
Yeah.
He is Rick fucking Dalton, Westy.
He sure is.
How was
I won't forget
LDC?
it.
That's our lead.
He's fantastic. I mean, somebody has to lead this, right? DiCaprio's been in a lot of ensemble pieces, but this, he's just slightly above everybody else, I think, with what the work that he's been given to do, and he nails it with aplomb. I think this is just, for me, one of the best performances, not just one of the best DiCaprio performances. I think this is miles better than The Revenant. I'll put that out there, that he won the
that's
Oscar
great.
for.
Yeah, I agree.
I really do think this is far more layered, far more nuanced. Just the stutters he puts in, the depth he puts into this character, the sense of like complete hopelessness that he puts into this at some points. The bromance he's got with Pitt, their connection is just so important, and it
Brilliant.
really, really works. But what gets me every single time is the middle of this film where you're watching DiCaprio be a bad actor. So you're watching a good actor be a bad actor, then be a great actor, then just be DiCaprio acting as a good actor. And he hits them 3 levels seamlessly. And it's not like, oh, that's taking me out of the film. And we'll talk about it later when he misses his line and he just takes the slurp out of that cup and he's like, and just sits there. You go, that should be terrible. But then he comes back later and and then it's intercut with that whole trailer sequence. And then it goes back again to his amazing sequence. And then he starts kind of losing it and he's like, I can relax now. I'm back. I'm Rick Dalton, DiCaprio. But you never once think, oh, that's Leonardo DiCaprio. You think that's Rick Dalton.
Yeah.
I think he just totally owns the character. He becomes the character. There's every layer to this where you want a leading man in this film. You want to be him, but you want to be Cliff. You do not want to be Rick at all. You don't want it. And he wants you to want to be him throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
He actually wants to be himself, which is why the posters are on the wall, which is why he tries so hard. And he's a failure to himself, therefore he's a failure to us. But in the end, he's the one who kind of brings everything together. Such a great performance, such a great character. And I don't think I've seen DiCaprio better than this, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I remember when the film came out, everyone was talking about how great Brad Pitt is. I don't disagree, and we'll talk about him. But the more I watch this, the more I think DiCaprio is just incredible. I think he's a great flawed character, firstly, Rick, based on Steve McQueen, like I mentioned, but seems to represent a whole generation of actors who probably found themselves out in the cold and a bit irrelevant with the emergence of new Hollywood in the late 60s. He's massively insecure. He's pretty selfish. Not always endearing traits, but I think we do like Rick.
And it's there, but I don't quite know why either. I kind of put my finger on it, but I think it's DiCaprio's performance. He doesn't pull at the heartstrings. It's just very honest.
It's in the quality of the writing, but it does also come from DiCaprio. I think the nuance he brings to a role is one of his biggest strengths as an actor. He does that here. He brings so much pathos, so much depth to Rick, and it is really layered. Not just because of the details in there, but because that's the character. Rick's an actor, so DiCaprio has to play Rick, not just as a person, but when he's acting. And by the nature of the story, like you said, Westy, the quality of Rick's acting is up and down like a yo-yo. And DiCaprio portraying that, sometimes within the same scene. I mean, he looks every inch the Hollywood legend he's kind of become, for me.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we kind of expect excellence from him. And when we get it, we maybe take it for granted a bit. I definitely did the first time I watched this film. And, I mean, he's almost always top-notch. But this is up there with DiCaprio's best, for me.
Very much agreed. This is my favourite kind of DiCaprio performance. You know, he can do the very intense stuff like The Revenant very well, but then he does comic roles like this, and I think that's where he really excels. And that's absolutely true of the character here. Like, a lot of this performance comes down from DiCaprio hitting the comic beats. Like, when he's talking about Easy Breezy to Trudy, and he just starts breaking down in tears. That'll be you
really
in 15 years. That's really funny. And the other thing I really like about DiCaprio is that, apart from, like, a couple of early roles in his career, like Titanic, Romeo and Juliet, he always plays against his looks. Like, he's a really handsome guy, obviously, but he makes Rick Dalton here an absolute physical wreck. Like, he coughs and splutters his way through this film. I think it's really funny. The first thing when he's in that makeup trailer, first thing he does, face in the bowl of ice water, because he's that knackered from the night before.
Just smoking and coughing.
Smoking all the time, just spluttering everywhere. He's falling to pieces, really. And in the aspect, we've touched on a little bit, but what's really fascinating to me is the little stammer that he brings to the character, because that stammer is only there when he's Rick in person. When he's acting, that stammer disappears.
Yeah.
Which I think is such an interesting little nuance that he brings to it. So it's a very funny performance. He fills it with this ramshackle, broken down charm, a lot of vulnerability. He takes his ego completely out of this. I mean, it absolutely is one of my favourite DiCaprio roles as well. I think he's just fantastic in this.
Yeah, that stutter's only there when he's sober as well, if you've noticed.
Yeah.
It's very much like a self-aware ego thing.
Well, Tarantino had worked with DiCaprio before in Django Unchained and only ever wanted DiCaprio to play Rick Dalton. Apparently, DiCaprio took a 25% pay cut to sign up.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
No pay cuts for QT. 25%
No, he gets 25% extra,
Massive pay cut for you, pay off for me.
DiCaprio watching flyers getting printed and put in windows. Nobody's going to look at the flyers. That's my 25% there. The adverts that are out of focus. What are you talking about?
And as we've said, Tarantino took a lot of inspiration from Steve McQueen in writing Rick. because one of the roles that set McQueen on the way to Hollywood stardom was a TV western in the 50s called Wanted, Dead or Alive. That was about a bounty hunter, and that became Dalton in Bounty Law. And Tarantino said that when he was writing Rick's backstory, he wrote the first few chapters of a biography about Rick Dalton. Of course he did. And he called that The Man Who Would Be Steve McQueen. And he said DiCaprio reading that was one of the things that convinced him to take the part.
The Man Who Would Be McQueen. What a title that is. And the opening shot of the film is Rick as Jake Cahill ripping down a poster that says "Wanted, Dead or Alive."
Yeah.
Surely intentional.
Definitely, yeah.
Could Rick have been McQueen, though? How would he have been in The Great Escape?
I mean, I love the clip of him in there. It is absolutely seamless. And it's interesting because Rick has so much anxiety about himself as a person. But when you see him in those film-within-film moments, he looks great. And you think, you know what? I would watch him in The Great Escape.
Imagine him in the Tower of Inferno and he's like, is there anything we can do about that heat? It's a fire rip.
I like the way he swaggers off after he's finished his little speech in The Great Escape.
He does, yeah. Like McQueen,
Yeah, I mean, staying on the Great Escape scene as well, Robert Richardson, the DP, said shooting the Great Escape scene, check this out, wasn't that hard. I disagree.
Looks really hard.
Yeah, I disagree, Robert. DiCaprio dressed in copies of the same clothes McQueen wore, and they shot him against a green screen. He said the biggest challenge was making sure that the shot was the same height and that the lighting matched perfectly.
And the visual effects team then had to remove McQueen from the original footage and composite DiCaprio on top, which took months, apparently.
Yeah, and then grade the footage so it looks the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It looks great, doesn't it? Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
Do you know who the effects supervisor was on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't.
Not a clue.
Unfortunately.
It was John Dykstra, two-time Oscar winner, visual effects supervisor on the original Star Wars.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So he knows a thing or two.
Yes, he
does.
TIE Fighters in there.
Imagine if like, a couple of years later he's in The Empire Strikes Back as Yoda. That would have been good. Richardson, that was quite hard, actually.
And Rick is also based on Western TV stars who lost out in the change to New Hollywood. Ralph Meeker, he was a talented TV actor. He got left behind in this change. And Pete Duell, who was in Alias Smith and Jones, but he was a bipolar alcoholic who committed suicide, sadly. And Tarantino said DiCaprio took aspects of both of them to play Rick and said, if Rick was offered deliverance, he would have turned it down.
I mean, I don't blame him. Depending on whose part he was offered. Ned Beatty's part. No thanks.
Yep, skip that.
Reynolds, yeah, go on then.
For his performance as Rick, Leonardo DiCaprio was nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars, but lost out to any takers?
Joaquin Phoenix, Joker.
It was Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. Yeah. As far as we're concerned, though, DiCaprio was Rick. Hilarious at times, heartbreaking at others. Pretty good stuff from Leo.
One of his best, I'd say.
The second male lead is Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, Rick's stunt double, driver and all-round handyman, where with Cliff as he fixes Rick's TV antenna, has a scrap with Bruce Lee and then another with the Manson family, as you do. He's a good friend, though, isn't he, Matt?
I just don't think he's ever had an easier gig in his life, has he? Brad, will you turn up and just be yourself? Just be the coolest person around? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Can do that. He just brings that natural aura of cool that he has. And it's the interesting contrast. Rick is the movie star, but he has no movie star charisma. He's a bag of nerves, shredded by self-doubt. Cliff is the guy in the background. Nobody knows him, but he's got all the confidence in the world and nothing phases him. But he brings an edge to the performance as well underneath it all, underneath all the good humour, underneath all the palling around with Rick, all the dependability that he brings. There's that sense of you shouldn't push this guy, the mystery of what happened to his wife, possibly made up story of fighting with Bruce Lee. And even if it's not true, the aura that Pitt brings means you believe it anyway, that it could happen. And it means that when he erupts at the end of the Manson family, you absolutely believe he has it in him to face them all down. He can face anybody down. I think it's just tailor-made for Brad Pitt. I think he's really, really great. Very watchable, very funny, very charming.
I think Tarantino's always had talent for writing double acts in his movies. Vincent Jules, Clarence in Alabama, Django and King Schultz, all great.
Yeah.
And Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth are right up there.
Definitely.
There's two friends who care about each other. I totally buy it. I don't doubt for a second that Cliff would defend Rick and his wife from the Manson family. Yeah. I don't doubt that Rick would go out of his way to get Cliff a role on a set or defend him against rumours about killing his wife. But what's great is how that all works when they couldn't be more different. Rick's spending his life pretending to be the guy that Cliff actually is to get people to care about him, but nobody cares about Cliff, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Rick seems to have a costume change every scene. Cliff, double denim, and then that champion T-shirt with the Hawaiian shirt. That's all he wears.
Yeah.
And then just white denim at the end, isn't it?
Yeah. And unlike Rick, Cliff doesn't change one iota. At the start, Marvin calls him a good friend, and Cliff says, I try. Then at the end, Rick says, you are a good friend, and Cliff says, I try. Yeah. No growth, no arc, just Cliff. And I think that's why we like him. Yeah. It's quite nice to see somebody who's just happy with his lot. That's kind of the whole point, isn't it? To be content. And Cliff is definitely that. And Brad Pitt, I've said this before about him, but I think he's a better supporting actor than he is a lead sometimes. And this kind of backs that up for me. Great chemistry with DiCaprio. He pulls off that double denim without breaking a sweat. And that kind of loose devil-may-care stoner vibe, he does that great. Cliff's like an older version of Floyd from True Romance. And my favourite Pitt performance in anything.
It's certainly up there for me. I mean, he's just having lots of fun sitting in the sidecar here, isn't he? He's playing second fiddle. But he's not. We're just very confused over. It seems like Robin's got the lead role and Cliff is Batman, but he's just not putting the suit on. He's just happy to be Bruce Wayne for a little bit. He's just retired. And there's a lot of talk as well whenever we talk about this film. There's always been these discussions of like, what if you actually swap the actors around? But I don't think it would have the dynamic that it's got because they really do reinforce each other's characters. And I think they did that in real life. I think they used that when they were acting off each other, especially when you've seen them interviewed after the film, is that they were just so close and they just developed their relationship as friends outside of the film, which developed the relationship inside the film. And I think it really works. He's fantastic as a stuntman. Very believable. Yeah. Love the way he gets on that fucking roof. I think
great.
That's just,
the sound effects are like...
it's just super. Doesn't need to take his top off, but I'm happy that he does. That's wonderful. Why not? You know, it's eye candy for everybody. It's just fine. Just enjoy it. He's got absolutely nothing to prove. Nobody to please. Nobody to pander to. He's happy in his trailer. He's happy with his dog. And he just cares about Rick and he cares about Brandy, and I think that's about it. Yeah. And when you realise at the end that the relationship's over and they're splitting up and they're just going to have one more drink and they're going to have one more party, and that's the only way to say goodbye, it's pretty heartbreaking. But then you realise in that goodbye there's actually a new start, and that you'll see him again tomorrow, bring bagels, it's all he's bothered about. And he just sells it. I mean, and I think this is the first time we've seen, well, it's the first time we really see Brad Pitt as Brad Pitt, having fun as Brad Pitt. Yeah. Because we've seen it before, like you've said, when he's in True Romance and he's fantastic in that, but he's obviously playing a character, he's not playing himself. Here he's playing the older version of that as Brad Pitt, which is wonderful to see. You see Electric on screen and he's fantastic. So perfect combination with DiCaprio's character. I think they're both absolutely fantastic together. And I want to see more.
I'd love to. Yeah. Well, Brad Pitt and QT had worked together, of course, on Inglourious Bastards. We've talked all about that, so get stuck into it.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
And he was first choice to play Cliff. Apparently, though, Pitt said no at first, and Tarantino discussed the part with somebody else. Do you know who that was?
Not a clue. Can't imagine who it would be.
Well, get this. It was Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise?
Wow.
How would that have been?
Would have taken him 45 minutes to get on that fucking roof.
Well, Pitt changed his mind a few months later, apparently, so we do get the Leo and Brad show, which turned out pretty well, didn't it?
To be honest, I mean, it would have worked if it was Tom Cruise.
Of course it would have.
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino knows what he's doing.
So does Cruise. Yeah, they're both there.
What's Luke Perry doing in there? Of course it makes perfect. What's John Travolta doing in Pulp Fiction? Well, you'll see. You know, he knows what he's doing.
I'd love to see Cruise in a Tarantino film.
I would have loved to have seen that as like a film within a film. Like Cruise was the stuntman on Bounty Law.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
That would have been fucking because like Cliff broke his leg or something, so he had to have a stand-in. It would have been like when Ben Stiller did that thing at the MTV Awards when he was Cruise's stunt double. That would have been fantastic. Something like that really would have worked, but we shall see. Maybe next time.
And Tarantino said that a few years before making the film, he'd been making another movie, and one of his actors asked him if he could get a part for My Guy, and his guy turned out to be somebody who was once a stunt double, but now was personal assistant. And Tarantino knew the stories about Steve McQueen being close with his stunt double, Bud Eakins, and Burt Reynolds being close with Hal Needham, and he thought, if I ever make a movie about making movies, that relationship could be a unique way in.
Yeah, Bud Eakins did the famous motorcycle jump on The Great Escape, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, and the Hal Needham one with Reynolds as well. Was that not a documentary that came out like called Bandit? Came out in 2016. I think you would have seen that before this, maybe. That might be an
possibly, yeah. Well, he was on
yeah.
Smoking the Bandit, yeah.
Yeah.
He broke 56 bones and broke his back twice in his career. I'll need him, apparently.
Wow. Dedication there.
Yeah.
So have I, and I've not even a stuntman.
But yeah, McQueen's all over this, and that's not the last time I mentioned Burt Reynolds either.
No.
For his performance as Cliff, Brad Pitt was nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars and won, beating out heavy hitters like Tom Hanks, Anthony Hopkins, and Al Pacino. And for us, Brad Pitt is very well cast as Cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The final cast member we're discussing in depth is Margot Robbie, who plays Sharon Tate. A rising star in Hollywood's shifting world, we follow Sharon's story as she embraces her newfound lifestyle and fame, and, thankfully, turns out to be just fine at the end.
Yeah.
The girl from Valley of the Dolls, Westy.
Yes.
How is Sharon Tate and Margot Robbie playing her?
Which one is she in Valley of the Dolls?
The one that
she's
did dirty movies.
The dirty movies. Yeah, stand by the posters, I want to know who you are. I think she's just an absolute joy in this. And Margot Robbie, for me, is in no way a negative actress. She never brings anything negative to a role. She's just this real positive light. Like even in Wolf of Wall Street, when she's booting off, it's just like, she just has this real charisma and a real sense of self-worth, which she brings to Sharon's life. And I think it's a celebration of her life, not a spotlight on her death. And I think that's really important for Margot Robbie to portray that. I think when she's watching Tate on the screen, watching Wrecking Ball, it's just a really wonderful moment.
It is.
It's really emotional because maybe she did that, and maybe, somebody's doing that and just thinking, was that any good? And to have that recognition, that reassurance from strangers, and she just walks out beaming, and she walks out buzzing, and she has them, even just the little lines of dialogue, even when she's just so caring. Brings people in, and every time somebody turns up, she's happy to see them. She's just this ray of light, just this ray of sunshine.
Gives the hitchhiker a lift.
Yeah, and they'd hug each other. And
just has a great time.
Sir. And it's like, good luck in your adventures. And then she goes one way, the hitchhiker goes another. She's just not a problem with her whatsoever. And Robbie absolutely nails that. She shines without it being over the top. She's not fighting for any screen time. But what she's done is she brings more to it with her character and with her style. And that overall performance, even just walking down the street, just fucking walking down the street.
It's great.
It's a joy. Yeah. The character is perfectly portrayed in every single scene, just dancing, the records, every scene that she's in. Her character doesn't change. She has this consistent bar, and it's consistently high. And she's consistently fantastic. I think with limited screen time, she absolutely shines, and she's incredibly memorable as the character.
Yeah, a bit similar to how I undervalued DiCaprio the first time I saw this film.
Yeah.
I think I did the same with Margot Robbie, mainly because thinking I knew what was coming, she wasn't in it quite as much as I expected.
Yeah, did you distance yourself from her when you were
probably,
first watching it, going, I don't really want to get involved with her because this is going to be a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, I think I probably did. Now I think she's really good. I mean, Sharon doesn't have a huge role in terms of driving the plot. She is secondary to the main narrative going on around Rick, then Cliff. What I like, though, in both the writing and the acting, is that it's very respectful to the real Sharon Tate.
It is,
and that it does present her positively in pretty much every way. I think where Rick represents the jaded, kind of tired part of Hollywood, what the industry does to people at its worst, Sharon represents what it does at its best. She's like the dream factory personified. I think Tarantino uses her to represent what's good about Hollywood, but is also saying specifically about Sharon Tate, look at what we lost.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with Robbie where she said that when she did research into the real Sharon, it became obvious that she was an angel on this earth, as she called her, and that comes across. Sharon's like a beacon of light for everyone around her. She's like the poster for The Thing, just light radiating from her. And who better to play a rising movie star than Margot Robbie at that time? Not her best acting performance, maybe, but it's not that kind of role. It's a role for a movie star. She has to exude charisma and look great without saying much, and she does. And you know someone's good looking when they can put on those huge jam jar specs Sharon does in the cinema and still look good.
Yeah. She's the only person with absolutely manky feet I would let them put up in a cinema. That's the only person. Anyone else on God's green earth is out the door.
Yeah.
I turn around and it's like, it's Robbie, Sharon Tate. Nah, it's fine.
You're probably right. Anyone else with that shot, it would be hard to look at.
It would be, disgusting. Disgusting.
Tate is very deliberately written here by Tarantino in the sense that, no, she doesn't have any kind of arc. Not even that much of a character, to be honest. And I know that's a problem for some people, and I understand it. But the point is, Sharon Tate represents something more than herself here. She represents all the joy in the world and all the innocence of the time that sadly got ripped away. So in that respect, and we all know Robbie is a very gifted actress and she's capable of outstanding performances. all you need from Robbie is for her to exemplify that. And it's not just because of, the way she looks, but she has such an innocence to her as well. Like, so many scenes in this, she literally just dances through the scenes because she's just filled with joie de vivre. And there's so many moments where she's just beaming from ear to ear because she's so happy, and that's the point. The film doesn't need an in-depth exploration of what Tate was like as a person. It's what she represents, and Robbie represents it perfectly.
Yeah, it's that lifestyle, isn't it? I mean, without sounding derogatory, what she's got to work with here is a music video performance.
Yeah.
That's it. You're in a music video, basically, and you've got to do all of this with a couple of lines of dialogue. And
but she makes it seem much more than that, doesn't she? Yeah.
She does, She does. She's great.
And Tarantino said that when he was writing the script, he was only thinking of Sharon Tate and not about which actress might play her, like, specifically. But just about the time he finished the script, he received a letter from Margot Robbie telling him she's a huge fan and would love to work with him someday. He said it was kismet.
Well, either that or Margot Robbie heard he was casting a film starring a young blonde beauty and thought, fancy my chances here, to be honest.
That could be me.
I'll give this a bash, why not?
And out of respect for the Tate family, Tarantino contacted Sharon's younger sister, Deborah, to let her know he was making a film with Sharon as a main character. And Deborah said, understandably, she didn't like the idea at the time until she met with Tarantino and spent time with Robbie, and she realised Sharon was in good hands. And she even loaned them some of Sharon's jewellery, and Robbie wore it when filming the Playboy Mansion scene.
Wow.
Tarantino didn't contact Roman Polanski directly, understandably, but allowed a representative of his to read the script to let him know he had nothing to worry about.
Right.
Yeah, Deborah Tate was only 16 when Sharon was killed.
Right.
And she was on the set for a lot of filming, apparently. And I mean, 50 years since you'd seen her sister. I can't even imagine how that must have felt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't blame Tarantino for not contacting Polanski directly, though. A right can of worms.
Avoid that.
Just leave that. Yeah. I would have just said like one of them, just skywriter or something. Nothing to worry about.
You have no dialogue. Don't worry.
You throw a ball for a dog at some point.
That's it.
Margot Robbie was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars that year, but it wasn't for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was for Bombshell, if you recall that. Here, though, as Sharon Tate, we think Margot Robbie puts in a very good supporting turn and captures the spirit of something Hollywood's lost, maybe.
Definitely does.
Yeah, more than's necessary, really. Absolutely shines.
So that is the holy trinity of our main cast. We've talked about Al Pacino already, and we'll be talking more about the huge supporting cast as well. But in our leads, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, 3 performances that complement each other and the film very well for us.
Absolutely. Really well.
Yeah.
The middle.
Heading into the middle act of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and things are starting to take shape. We're going to be looking at the scenes and Rick's antics on the set of TV Western Lancer. But first, it's more from Cliff and Sharon.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So, having established our main characters and their struggles, we get 2 big scenes almost back to back.
Yeah.
We join Sharon as she visits the cinema to watch her new film, The Wrecking Crew, but not before Cliff has a memorable run-in on the set of The Green Hornet with a martial arts movie legend.
Yeah.
Westy, which would you prefer? A trip to the Bruin Theatre or a fight with Bruce Lee?
Theatre, please. I'm not Cliff Booth.
Well, how would you get on with him?
It's wonderful, isn't it? What a great scene this is. What did you do to my fucking cat?
That's great.
Brilliant. Love Zoe Bell in this. We'll get there, but I just had to get that in there first. It's all I think about when I think of this whole sequence. And when he takes his wig off as well and just puts his wig on. Like, it's just... Right, okay, let's get into it. Right. So, for me, I totally forget that this is one shot for the most part. It's one continuous shot up until he gets thrown into the car. Which is good because Pitt disappears and obviously the real stuntman comes in to grab Mike Moore and throw him off the screen. But up until that point, there's a lot of pressure on everybody. And it's unnecessary pressure because it doesn't need to be one shot. It doesn't need to... between them. It doesn't need all this. It doesn't need this extravagance. But you just don't realise how extravagant this shot is, how extravagant the whole scene is. And I think it's a really impressive performance from Mike Moore. I know there's a bit of controversy around it. And I think that the real takeaway from me watching this again is the dialogue back and forth is hilarious. Everyone's, it's called manslaughter. Anyone kills anyone,
It's really good.
That's brilliant. It's just them back and forth are absolutely wonderful. And Kurt Russell and Zoe Bell are absolutely wonderful in this. It's just great. They're both deal deal with it, Randy. It's excellent. And he's like, whoa. And what I've got to think about this is like the controversy surrounding it is like, right, okay, fair enough. But it's a flashback.
Yeah.
It exists in Cliff's memory of it.
Yeah.
So Cliff doesn't like Bruce Lee, so he's going to exaggerate how much of a dick he thinks he is.
Yeah.
It's just a stuntman having a fight with Bruce Lee, but in his head he's a bit of a dick, so he's embellished it and tried to find reasons that he reacted the way that he did. Probably because he's got PTSD and he's a Green Beret and he's coming out of the war and he's just there was an element of that maybe in there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So there's that wasn't really touched on. But when he picks him and throws him into the car, it's just so wonderful. There's just that massive dent there, and it's just the back and forth between them all. And I think you look at the way Lee's portrayed in Sharon's flashback when he's teaching her what she's doing.
Very differently,
how
Very
that's
different.
cross-cut, and he's wonderful in that. Very, very differently done. So again, it's a flashback within a fairy tale. And when QT's talked about this, it's like, he just goes, look, man, fucking hell, do you not realise that? That's the whole point. And I think that's the point that we're getting at. But this scene for me is an absolute standout. I think Pitt is wonderful. Everybody matches him. All the extras are great. Watch anybody and everybody nails it.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what they're doing. That's pure direction.
Considering what happens in the climax, it's pretty surprising this is going to be probably the most controversial scene because of the way
exactly.
Bruce Lee's portrayed. I do get that because he is portrayed as a bit of a loudmouth who can't back his words up. But the quality of the filmmaking, it's kind of beyond question, I think. I think Mike Moore, who plays Bruce Lee, is really good.
He's really good.
He's clearly got the moves. His line delivery's good, where he's like, my hands are registered as lethal weapons. It's quite funny.
Yeah.
And the first 2 minutes being one shot is really good. The whip pans between Cliff and Bruce as they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
We get close-ups, mid-shots, slow zooms, all in one shot. And I agree, Westy, this is probably the best I've seen Zoe Bell as Janet when she comes in ranting and raving at Cliff.
Yeah.
Get your shit and get great.
Get off the lot.
It is a divisive scene. I know the points to set Cliff up as a great fighter for later on. I also wish Bruce Lee came across a little bit better, and if he had, this would have been definitely up there as one of the best scenes in the film.
So we've talked about Mike Moore, and he was a Taekwondo black belt and actor, and he'd actually auditioned to play Bruce Lee several times before for other productions, but had always been rejected. Tarantino auditioned him several times and said he was impressed with how much Moore knew about Bruce Lee, so he ended up getting the part.
He played Ryu in a web series version of Street Fighter as well, Mike Moore.
Right.
Should have got a fireball in there on Cliff. Wouldn't stood a chance.
Yeah, after the film came out, Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee, criticised how her dad was portrayed in the film. She said Bruce would have avoided fights in real life, and the film makes him out to be an arrogant arsehole who was full of hot air and perpetuated the Hollywood image of her dad as a stereotype.
Yeah, I mean, from her point of view, I do see what she means.
Yeah.
Although Tarantino released a novelisation a couple of years after the film came out, and apparently in that, Bruce comes across a lot better. And it's made clear that Cliff can fight, but is no match for Bruce Lee.
Okay.
That's probably the version I'd have preferred to see in the film, I think, to be honest.
I think so, yeah.
Well, what do we think of Cliff's other memory on the boat? Did Cliff kill his wife, Matt?
I love the ambiguity of it, because I might be wrong. I'm obviously no expert, but the harpoon gun that he's carrying, it doesn't look loaded. So I don't know what the suggestion is there. And then you hear the sound of a wave hitting the boat. So it's left up to our imagination what did happen. But on that, Tarantino did write a whole chapter of a book. Obviously, of course he did.
Of course he did.
Called Misadventure, that explains what happened on the boat. And he gave it to Brad Pitt to read, but he said he'll never tell anybody else the truth.
Yeah, I think I prefer it left mysterious.
Yeah.
Miles better, yeah.
For me, that scene on the boat, it's already kind of reminiscent of the whole Natalie Wood tragedy. And then
Yeah,
Cliff's wife
it is.
says her sister is called Natalie, which I suspect isn't a coincidence.
Apparently it was, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, the actress just came up with Natalie just randomly.
Oh, did she really?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
right,
Tarantino
okay.
said that in his interview recently. He said it just should have said Natalie, so we don't quite know why she said it.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. Right.
Yeah,
I thought it was a name drop.
No, it wasn't, apparently.
So the other scene we've got going on here, which is Sharon going in the cinema, it's such a sweet scene. Like, it's hard to believe it comes in a Tarantino film. It's that nice. Like, I love the fact she's not being a dick about trying to get a freebie here. She's not pulling the whole, don't you know who I am act here. She's being really nice about it. And I think that's one of the most important elements of the film. That Sharon is, as Robbie kind of said, she's practically a saint. And when you watch her watching herself just beaming and so proud of what she's done being up on screen and how delighted she is to hear the audience laughing at her slapstick, it's such a charming moment for her. But what I think is really important is that's the real Sharon Tate we are watching up there. I genuinely love the fact that Tarantino respected her memory enough to not have Robbie recreate the wrecking crew. Because, they could have done like they did with The Great Escape, but they didn't. They played the real thing instead. So decades after those horrific events, Sharon Tate can still have her moment to shine. And I actually find it quite moving, that decision. And it doesn't bother me one bit that it's clearly not Margot Robbie up there, because I think it's just far more important that Sharon Tate gets more than her legacy is just, a victim of a murder, and she gets her moment to shine here. And I think that's really important in one of the most respectful things Tarantino could have done in the whole film.
I think people forget she was an actress.
They do. I think people do, yeah.
And that's what he's doing. He's reinforcing that she was a talent. And the innocence from Robbie in this whole sequence is fantastic. Like, it's
so charming.
Can I please get in?
It's brilliant. It's like a little short kind of from nowhere, and it is the most joyous part of the film. We said earlier that Sharon kind of represents Hollywood at its best, and this is that moment. Beautifully shot when we're watching Sharon watching herself, and it is quite sweet when she wants to get in for free just because she's in the film, just because she wants to be treated like she's famous. That's what it's about. And she does that pose like a Bond girl. I like it when she starts mimicking the martial arts moves as well that she's learned.
It's very funny.
And you're right, Matt, it is a classy touch how they don't replace Sharon Tate with Margot Robbie in the Wrecking Crew. I mean, we lost the whole Hollywood career. We don't need her erased from what we do actually have as well.
Exactly.
Not quite as classy a touch. Feet out. On the chair, obviously. Tarantino's favourite. Really dirty as well.
Can't resist it, can he?
This might not be as odd as it seems. Deborah Tate said that the real Sharon would go everywhere she could barefoot, like even to restaurants and going out places like that. So this apparently is a pretty accurate portrayal because her feet were dirty.
We'll let him off.
Inspiration for the whole film.
Exactly, I bet Tarantino couldn't believe his luck when he heard that.
Right, okay, so there's a stuntman and an actor.
And Tarantino said the inspiration for the scene came from something that had happened to him years earlier at the same place, the Fox Bruin Theatre. After True Romance came out, Tarantino was on a date and they went to the cinema. He told the manager he'd written the film, but the manager didn't believe him. I mean, why would you? His date, though, started backing him up, and some other people recognised him and asked for their pictures with him.
Yeah, apparently the manager said, who are all these people coming round? And Tarantino's date was like, they're all his fans. I'll tell you more than a date, isn't it?
That's amazing, that.
I mean, Reservoir Dogs would have been out then as well, so a cinema manager in LA should probably have known who he was.
Probably, to be fair.
Wouldn't have been a problem at Bowling Cinema with you guys, would it?
No, we let anyone in anyway.
Too much effort to argue. Dads, get in, man. It's fine.
Just get in. There's another scene around this time where Sharon goes to a bookstore and buys Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles as a gift for Roman Polanski. In real life, Sharon Tate bought Polanski the book and told him it would make a great movie, and she wanted to star in it. In 1979, he directed Tess, dedicated to Sharon.
Yeah, that was apparently the last time Polanski saw her alive, when she gave him that book.
Oh, really?
So a couple of big Hollywood scenes there, showing different sides of Tinseltown, martial arts in one, feet out in the other, so both very Tarantino.
Very Tarantino.
Oh, absolutely. Hand in hand.
With Cliff having shown us his physical prowess and Sharon her love of life, we're back to Rick and the set of TV Western Lancer. Cast as a villainous cowboy, Caleb Descartes, Rick goes through the whole gamut of struggling with his lines, having a trailer meltdown, being told what's what by an 8-year-old, then delivering a performance for the ages.
Amazing.
Yeah. He has quite the time, Westy. How's this all go for you?
Descartes. I just love that. That whole sequence is great. The one I'll go straight for, though, is when he forgets his lines and when he's in the middle of this and he's playing it through. And I think, again, a shout-out to Oliphant here. I think it's just absolutely really wonderful. Really sets it up and plays it so well. You would think he's an incredible actor, like an Oscar winner, the way he nails his so well. And it's like DiCaprio makes him look so good. But you can tell I love the way that it's just set and you've got the camera set and you've got position one and you know where you're going with it. And when he messes it up, it's just at the right time.
Yeah.
It's exactly where you don't expect it to happen. And I'm pretty sure that was down to DiCaprio. But my favourite thing from this is how hammy he is, how he overplays it, how he's the heavy, how he's just, he forgets the line and then repeats the line back. And then he's like, player can't pick it hard out. He's like, just spitting on the floor. And he's like, line! And he's just so frustrated with himself. It's just the way he just leans on the table and he's just trying to impose on the scene.
Yeah. But
my absolute favourite from this, I think, came from Robert Richardson, where they reset the track. and the track comes around past all of them, and stops on DiCaprio, and then he loses it, and they're like, right, okay, yeah, let's go again, position one, and it comes back, and they've added that squeak in post because the track's not supposed to go that way.
Oh, right,
nice. Squeaks on the way back, which is hilarious. So Tarantino's like, I think it was the editor who suggested, let's just put a little squeak on the track just to take the piss a little bit as it goes. So it's like, just that, it's like a sigh from the machinery. It's like the sigh from the camera going, have I got to start again? Because you fucked up everything for everybody. Wonderful performance here. As we've said, this is DiCaprio acting badly, but really well. It's a really brilliant portrayal of somebody who's losing the grasp on things, and someone who really needs to get a hold of it, otherwise it's slipping through his fingers, and you can see it at this point. It's just endlessly watchable, this sequence. It's great.
And how good does Lancer look? Looks great.
It's great.
That's what you're talking about, Westy, at the saloon table where the camera moves around the back of Johnny Madrid to show Caleb. What a shot that is.
Yeah, it's great.
And DiCaprio is incredible, where he's like, I ain't going to hurt her. I just want her to play the fiddle. How good's that delivery? It's great. But then Rick forgets his lines, and DiCaprio has to snap back to stuttering Rick, asking for help, and then back to Rick being Caleb, but not as good because he's kind of lost his confidence, starts overacting his arse off. He's whooping like Ric Flair. And then right in his face. It's hilarious. He does all that so well, DiCaprio, you almost don't notice how good he is.
And then following this, you get the scene of Rick furious at himself in the trailer, which I think is just such a funny scene. The edits are great, jumping about. And I just think, is the bit of art imitating life here? Has DiCaprio seen someone do that or done it himself?
Possibly.
I imagine it's very plausible. And let's face it, we've all been there to some degree. We've all drank 8 whiskey sours, done something stupid, and then been raging at ourselves the next morning.
It's the way he talks to himself, though.
Yeah.
How many times have you done it? You couldn't just stop at 4. You had a feeling. You're a miserable drunk. And he's like, I'm never drinking again. And then picks it up. He has a swing. He's like, kicks it up.
It's so funny.
Yeah, we always have a break in the middle of our episodes, don't we? Westy always mutes his mic and turns his camera off. And I always imagine this is what's going on the other side.
But you got to let yourself down for all those goddamn people. I look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, if I don't nail this when you get back, if you don't nail that ranking, I'm going to blow your head off in the pool.
But DiCaprio is fantastic again. When he's like, make yourself a promise, you're going to quit drinking, then straight in with the snifter.
Yeah.
So funny. But it's not just the acting. The editor, Fred Raskin, deserves a mention. The jump cuts are like dynamite.
And this whole idea of Rick forgetting his lines, it wasn't in the original script. DiCaprio suggested it to Tarantino, and he initially wasn't sure because he'd written Lancer to be a film within a film, but he did agree. And because there was nothing written, this is all improvised by DiCaprio.
I think there's some Taxi Driver there as well when he's talking to himself in the mirror. You don't get these lines right, I'm going to blow your f***ing brains. That's so funny.
In the pool. He has to mention the pool, even to himself. So look what I've got. But even the forgetting the lines, that was all DiCaprio as well. It was all his idea.
Yeah.
And he said, do it where you forget it and do it where you don't.
Yeah.
And the one where he forgot it, they kept in.
And so I think this means when Rick finally nails the scene, it's a genuine moment of triumph for him. And we've mentioned it, but the way DiCaprio can just go between, I'm a bad actor in this scene, now I'm a good actor, now I'm Rick not being an actor at all. And the way he jumps between them, but nailing it, he brings so much genuine menace to this bit. It's very much like his Django Unchained character. That's the kind of intensity he brings.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it still feels a little bit like a TV performance at the same time, and it really blurs the line between, am I watching an episode of a TV show being made or an actual episode of a TV show? I mean, I think DiCaprio's performance, I think we've all been saying it, first viewing it seems quite superficial, but it's not, there's so much nuance going on here, and you're genuinely delighted for him that it's gone well. Because you're laughing at him earlier, but he's not a joke of a character. You want him to succeed. So when he nails it and truly compliments him to the point he starts crying, the best acting he's ever seen, you just feel so victorious for him.
You definitely do. I mean, DiCaprio was knocking out great performances left, right and centre. Now it's crazy. Surely the brief here from Tarantino to DiCaprio must have been, play this how you would if you were playing Caleb. Because he's brilliant. When he's like, okay, messenger boy, deliver my message. Great. If anything, he's too good. Surely when that episode of Lancer went out, Dalton blew the rest of the cast off the screen.
Exactly, But you've all seen them episodes where it's like, how good was he in that? Where did that come from?
When someone comes in from another show or something like this. Definitely. And Trudy Fraser, we'll have to talk about the scene with her and Rick, surely.
It's just wonderful. And he's just kind of sitting next to you. And she's got this big biography of Walt Disney.
A massive,
Huge book. And doesn't eat lunch before a scene. Yeah. It's absolutely great. And he just thinks, oh, she's far more professional than I ever was or I ever will be. And he's completely out of his depth. And he's just like, do you mind if I sit next to you and read my book? It's just the opposite of, you know, the Inglourious Bastards pipe scene. It's like the opposite of that. He's just got that little paperback. He's halfway through it. The story he's talking about, you know, the guy who used to break the horses, now he can't do it anymore, and he's out. It's just basically his story that he's reading, and he's halfway through it. We're halfway through the film. It's very kind of reminiscent of what we're already going through. But she is absolutely wonderful. She just
great.
totally steals it. It's like, will I bother you? And he just constantly just snorts and spits, and he's just really uncomfortable and all over the place. Great scene. That you just think he's just going to sit next to this young girl and she's just going to be, oh, it's Rick Dalton, and oh my God, I can't believe it. Then she stays in character and he doesn't. She knows the guy's name and he doesn't. And he's just like correcting him without even knowing anything. And he's thinking, I'm really going to have to read the script again here. But yeah, a really, really funny moment, and it sets up everything that comes after it. I think it's fantastic.
how good Julia Butters is Trudy.
Julia Butters,
She's brilliant.
She's so good.
Sensational stuff from her,
She's so
the child
funny.
actress. Yeah, she's lecturing Rick on how to be an actor, and he's just sitting there looking really confused. What are you, 12? I'm 8.
Calling a pumpkin
The next
puss.
few years, keep an eye on the Oscars, because I think there'll be something coming.
And Tarantino said that when he writes, he often has the TV on for some background noise. And when he was writing this scene between Rick and Trudy, a sitcom was playing called American Housewife, featuring Julia Butters. And in the episode, which just happened to be playing, she delivered a monologue that Tarantino loved, so he got her in to audition for the role on the back of that.
And she was apparently partly based on Jodie Foster as well, as she was in some episodes of Gunsmoke as a child actress.
Okay.
Not a bad person to take off, is it?
Definitely not.
No. And then it cuts to Taxi Driver.
Exactly,
He knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
He does. Always did.
So Trudy Fraser was created by Tarantino, but Lancer was a real TV show. It was on between 1968 and 1970, so fit the setting of the film. As we've said, Timothy Olyphant, he plays James Stacey, who was Johnny Madrid Lancer. Luke Perry plays Wayne Maunder, who was Scott Lancer, and this is actually Perry's last role before he passed away. Nicholas Hammond plays Sam Wanamaker, who directed the pilot of the show in real life.
Nicholas Hammond, do you know who else he played? In the 70s version of The Amazing Spider-Man, he was Spider-Man.
Wow, okay, I vaguely remember that.
I love that. I've been watching that recently, actually.
I'm not done just yet.
Oh, okay.
He was one of the Von Trapp kids in The Sound of Music.
Was he?
Friedrich Von Trapp. How mad that? Then here he's like Hell's Angel. Vroom, vroom. He's nuts. Brilliant.
He's great.
He is.
He's great.
And we're through the middle section of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. A movie star fight, a movie star watching her own film, and a movie star meltdown. And pretty difficult to pick out the one that's the most Hollywood.
Yeah, all on the same level, yeah.
It is pretty difficult, yeah.
The Crew.
Quentin Tarantino had a vision for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, crafting a love letter to 1960s Los Angeles, but he didn't do it alone. Robert Richardson, as director of photography, played a huge role in that visual style, and the musical choices throughout were crucial as well. We'll talk about all of that, but we're going to begin back with QT and the screenplay. So behind the script of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was Quentin Tarantino himself. His 12th feature screenwriting credit, that's made up of the 9 he directed, plus True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, though, Westy, how was Tarantino the writer?
He's just a visionary, isn't he? From the page to the screen. Kurt Russell was quoted as saying, like, 5 pages in, he was doing it.
Yeah.
He was just reminiscent of everything that he'd been through. Obviously, he did the same when he was a kid, you know, 'cause he was through the whole system.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So, to me, it feels like it would have been very exciting to read, and I think he would have sprawled it out very, very quickly, and it would have been quite a substantial screenplay.
Always, yeah.
Every film is a collection of stories. Of sequences. This feels like the sequences are like short films within themselves, like you said about, you know, Sharon going to watch herself in The Wrecking Crew. It's just that could be a short film if you cut it out. Could it have been cut down and trimmed the fat off? Do we need the Playboy Mansion just to set up the dynamic between the three? I don't know if we do, but he does. And I think that's the point. There's not enough screenwriters out there who'll put it down on the page and say, this is how I want it to look, this is how I want it to be, this is finished, this is for the reader, not the viewer. And he's always said that. He says when he writes a screenplay, he writes it for the reader first.
Yeah.
Then he takes it and creates something for the viewer off the back of that.
Right.
And to me, this really makes sense. And he's having fun in the writing because you can tell this is all written down. And he's put the exposition in, he's put the narrative in, he's put the plots in the middle of these huge stories, these huge sequences. So for me, it's a perfect script. You can make this, I think, to be about an hour and a half. You could tell it's exactly the same story.
Oh, yeah, easy.
With exactly
Yeah,
the same beats, with exactly the same amount of humour, with exactly the same amount of action. But it's the way he embellishes that and adds fat to it. But it's not fat, it's just side dishes, I think, that really complement everything else, and it really works, and it's a real buffet of a film, and everything is Moorish and everything really works. And he would have got that absolutely nailed on the page. It really, really works for me. And that's why the novel came out. That's why, you know, he didn't stop writing about it, because it's just something that he feels is inside. And it's come out, and I think the film is just a snapshot of what's in his brain. And I think the script would have been a slightly bigger snapshot of that. And the novel, again, is a bigger snapshot. There's more to be said here. But he has, believe it or not, I think he's reined it in a little bit when it came to the film, but not the screenplay. I think it's wonderful. It's just a wonderful, wonderful realisation of the time, a wonderful love letter to cinema, a wonderful love letter to Hollywood, a wonderful love letter to himself. I think it's great.
Well, as for the directing, there's a lot in the writing, I think, that is kind of quintessential Tarantino. Lots of pop culture references, loads of singers in the dialogue, characters just kind of hanging out. He loves all that. And as is always the case with Tarantino films, I'm never bored.
No.
I love the concept. The idea of creating a fairy tale set in the closest thing we have to a fairy tale land in Hollywood. And the end of the film comes as a surprise first time round, but he tells us what he's doing from the start.
Yeah.
It's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Obviously a Sergio Leone nod as well, but he's telling us this is a fairy tale. The first time I saw the film, I was probably a little bit disappointed with how light on plot it is, because you don't normally get that with Tarantino. And now I would love to see more of that world, like I mentioned, but taking it for what it is, I think the writing is fantastic. I mean, this isn't a conventional 3-act story. He's writing it as almost like a time capsule to take us to that period. And I think that's why he takes these detours to the set of Lancer or to Spawn Ranch that we'll talk about. He's immersing us like in the world. And what makes it interesting is that it's a world that was changing at the time. Hippie movement, the counterculture, the decline of Westerns, New Hollywood. It's all there in the background and kind of personified in the foreground in Rick, who's terrified of becoming irrelevant. There's loads of vulnerability in Rick, something we hadn't seen much of, if at all, in Tarantino's characters before this.
No.
It feels quite a bit more mature than his other stuff, I think, from that point of view.
Emotionally, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the most tightly constructed plot you'll ever see, but maybe that's the point. That Hollywood's famous for writing propulsive narratives, but the truth of the real Hollywood is that it's a place with people the same as anywhere else. I mean, having been there his whole life, Tarantino understands that as well as anyone. And I think, I'm not saying this is his best piece of writing, but it might be the one that shows the most growth as a writer without losing sight of what made him singular in the first place.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a special thing, the writing here, and it definitely gets better on rewatches for me.
Yeah. I think this is the one that turned him from a screenwriter to an author.
Yeah, you can see why he thought about doing it as a book, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things about Tarantino, I think, is that underneath all the violence and bad language he puts in his films, he's always put heart in it at the same time. Like Pulp Fiction, he writes in such a way that Jules and Vincent can walk off together at the end of the film because they are favourite characters, despite the fact Vincent is actually being killed.
Yeah.
Kill Bill is about reuniting with the daughter. Django Unchained is about rescuing his enslaved wife. And so this is just a love letter to this period of Hollywood, like he's been saying, to the people who were there, but never quite got the critical kudos. Like, Rick's a good actor, but he was just never given the right material. But all he really needs is his best friend alongside him. So it's a love letter to male friendship as well. It's a love letter to the people who were behind the scenes and never quite got their moment to shine. It's a love letter to Sharon Tate. And you can tell this personally means something to Tarantino. We'll talk about the wish fulfillment of the end and when we get there. But he's not written that because, oh, that'll be cool. It's the way he really wishes life had turned out.
Yeah.
That's the romantic in him. It's by far and away the most romantic thing he's ever written. And it shows that underneath it all, he's a massive softie. He's got such a soft heart for this period of time and these people and what they represent.
It's the most genuine thing he's ever written, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Tarantino said the first thing he came up with was the ending for the film, and then he worked his way back from there and created the plot to lead to the third act. He originally planned to write it as a novel and spent 5 years doing that before realising he had a lot of ideas of how he thought the story should look.
Yeah, I think of all his stories, to me, the only one that's about Hollywood as the only one that isn't a film would have been quite a gutsy choice.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very Tarantino, does it?
No, not at all.
Definitely not. So his previous film was The Hateful Eight, and he had a problem with that because the script was leaked online before he started filming, which almost led him to scrapping that movie. So to avoid the same happening here, he didn't send the script out. Instead, he sent an email to all major studios telling them to send one representative to his agent's office in Beverly Hills to read his Manson Family script. Each person had to sign a heavy NDA, read the script in front of them, and they couldn't make notes.
Wow.
Read in front of them. That's not stressful at all.
What do you think of it?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Way up, dude.
Oh, yeah, that bit's good.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at?
I mean, I don't blame him after what happened on The Hateful Eight. I'd have it under lock and key as well.
Yeah.
Well, for his work as writer of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars, lost out yet again to Parasite, written by Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won. By sounds of it, though, we do like QT's writing here.
Oh, yeah, love it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Moving from the screenplay, let's talk about the music. Not for the first time with a Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doesn't feature an original score. It's soundtracked by many period-specific pop songs. Matt, how effective is the soundtrack?
Hugely effective, because what stands out to me is he uses the music in a slightly different way to how he normally does, because there aren't necessarily the kind of scenes in this where he hits you with a big choice over the top of it. I think probably the standout in that sense is when he uses Out of Time to set up the third act, which the lyrics of that song combined with, as we've been saying, what we think we know is going to come.
Yeah.
First time around, it just makes you take a bit of a deep breath, like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is how much of those other songs, they are records being played by the characters, or the songs on the radio playing in the car. So many of the songs in this are diegetic. They're heard by the characters. They're not played over the top of them. And I think that's part of the reason this film nails that sense of time, because the songs, it doesn't feel like I'm listening to a soundtrack. I feel like I'm listening to the time instead.
A radio station.
Like a radio station. It's laid into the world. It's not on top of it. It's laid into it. So it may not have the kind of iconic needle drop Tarantino gives in Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs, but I think it's his cleverest use of music instead.
Yeah, the music's right up my street. Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Box Tops, Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. That's my running playlist from when I was 21. They just all happen to be on this soundtrack as well. Just needs the Count 5 and the Sonics. So I do love the music, but I think the way Tarantino uses it is what's interesting. The radio is like on a radar. The song lyrics tell us what's happening on the screen in front of us, often around Sharon. And the radio DJs, they tell us what's happening around us in the wider world. We get our first proper look at Sharon when she's on the way to the Playboy Mansion with Polanski, and the car radio plays Hush. She's the best girl that I ever had. Slow-mo close-ups of Sharon. That stuff works great. QT went for the Deep Purple version over Cooler Shaker. Probably for the best.
Probably for the best, yeah.
There's other times when we hear Bobby Kennedy get mentioned by DJs on the radio as well. And in the third act, Out of Time by the Stones. You're right, Matt. It's almost the whole song. I love it. But baby, 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 you're out of time, as we're looking at Sharon, thinking we know what's to come. That was massive the first time I saw it. Jagger making me sick to my stomach.
Not for the first time.
Exactly. But banger after banger on the soundtrack, and thematic relevance as well. I'm not sure you can ever look past Pulp Fiction as Tarantino's greatest soundtrack, but this is probably my favourite of his.
Yeah, I immediately went out and bought this.
Of course you did.
Just immediately, because I need when you put this on, it feels like you're playing a record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, some albums you buy and you put it on, you're like, oh, that just sounds the same. It's not. There's nothing to it. There's no texture to it. This, you put it on, you just don't skip anything. It's got all of the adverts in the middle of it. The soundtrack's absolutely brilliant.
Nice.
It's all part of it, and you just feel like you're transported yet again. So he's done it in the soundtrack. He's done it in the script. He's done it in the film. And what I get from this, I'm not going to reel off all of the amazing songs because you guys have already touched on it. And I mean, it is an incredible soundtrack. Probably top 5, obviously.
Your top 5's got about 500 entries.
That's the point. That's the comedy. That's the comedy I'm trying to bring to this, you see. It's finally sinking in. There we go. It's top 5. It's wonderful. I love the Bounty Law soundtracks as well. He's obviously got them off the CBS library.
Yeah.
And they all tie in, you know, the 14 Flips of McCuskey, that soundtrack's fantastic. It harks back to the Dirty Dozen kind of thing and the Glorious Bastards kind of vibe. That all works within it. But watching this, and I remember it vividly, Mrs. Robinson, right? I must have heard that song 4 million times.
Yeah.
Simon and Garfunkel, for me, were just like a pinnacle. My dad used to play it in the car. Mrs. Robinson, I heard it 1 million times. I heard it in this film, and it sounded totally different.
Wow.
It was like it had been remastered. It's like it had a different identity. It had like a life to it, a vibrancy to it, a reason to it.
Yeah.
And everything that I listen to in a Tarantino soundtrack just seems to be elevated somehow. Like the 5, 6, 7, 8s on Kill Bill. I went and I bought the 5, 6, 7, 8s album.
Yeah.
And I put that song on it and it wasn't any good. Really, in context, it was just annoying. It was just, and I'm driving along going, what on earth what am I getting from this? Nothing. But if you put it in the context of his universe and him, it's like, you know, you've got that friend who's just got that really good taste in everything.
Yeah.
And there's just got that really good taste in music. And listen to this, and you go, when you listen to it in their house on their speakers, and you're like, this is amazing. You go and buy it, and you listen to it at home, and you go, this doesn't hit, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think he can take any song and put it on a soundtrack to any of his films and completely elevate it. Like, you never can tell the Chuck Berry song. Whenever I hear that again, but it's never as good as Pulp Fiction.
No, never is.
It's never as good as when you're watching it, and that's what he does. Any song you can give him, and it'll completely elevate the song. And I would never have thought in a million years I would hear Mrs. Robinson differently, and I definitely did.
Yeah.
You know, and like. And when it comes to California Dreaming, he doesn't have the Mamas and Papas version. I love that, it's the Joseph Feliciano version.
Yeah.
It's like, why put that in there? But it totally works. And you listen to it and you're like, oh, but out of context, I wouldn't listen to that version. It's not that good. But it is when it's in his world. And that's what he does with soundtracks. That's why I love them so much. And yeah, it is for me as well, John. I think it's probably my favourite Tarantino soundtrack.
I think he might be the best at using songs in films.
It's too close to Scorsese for me.
Yeah.
It's too close.
Scorsese's up there as well.
Just for that Sunshine of Your Love scene in Goodfellas, I cannot shake it. I cannot shake it.
So in 1969, the most popular radio station in Los Angeles was KHJ Boss Radio, and Tarantino listened to it himself as a child, and he managed to get hold of 14 hours worth of tapes from listeners who'd hand-recorded the station back in 1969, and those were the tapes he used to select the soundtrack.
And do you know when Charles Manson turns up at Sharon's?
Yeah.
Yes.
He says that he's looking for Terry.
Yes.
So that's Terry Melcher, who lived at 10050 Cielo Drive before Sharon with a guy called Mark Lindsay. They were the producer and lead singer of Paul Revere and the Raiders, which is presumably why they're on the soundtrack 5 times.
Right. Depending on what you read, Manson had a few motives for what happened at Cielo Drive. He was trying to start a race war by pinning the murders on the Black Panthers. That was one. And according to some, one of the things which sent Manson over the edge and turned him into a killer was when Terry Melcher turned down the chance to sign him as a musician.
And Terry Melcher was the son of Doris Day. Yeah. All that just from Does Terry Live Here? That's Tarantino.
Yeah.
You don't get Oscars for hand-picking pop songs to score your film, but if you did, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might have been in contention, do you think?
Yeah.
I think it should have basically invented the category for it.
A long-time Tarantino collaborator was behind the camera on this one, with Robert Richardson serving as director of photography.
Yeah.
This marked their 5th feature film together after Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight. Those sun-drenched LA visuals then, Westy.
Yeah.
What do you make of Robert Richardson's work here?
I mean, is there any flaws here? No.
Not that I can see.
Not that I can see. Not that I've really looked. He's just such a talent, Richardson, in that he's absolutely invisible, and most good DPs are, and that he has a style, but if you really need to look for it.
Right.
And it's mostly that top, really contrastly, really bright top light that bounces off a table, that table light that he uses. It's predominantly, and if you look in Inglourious Bastards, that whole opening sequence is basically lit from that table light, which kind of bounces around the room. And it's in here as well when Cliff and Rick are in the bar, and it's just that incredible light on the table from kind of nowhere. It's not motivated. There's no practicals there. But the thing that strikes me about how rich and vibrant and beautiful this film is that Tarantino has asked them to pull... empty your toolbox. Not pull anything out of it. Empty it onto the table. Put everything in a line and use everything one after the other. We've got car shots, internal, external, low tracking shots, overhead shots, crane shots, dollies, crash zooms. It's just ludicrous how much work he's got to do here, and everything is seamless. The way he's sticking to Tarantino's vision. For someone to have a vision and say, I have a vision that covers absolutely every shot that's available, with every single lens that you've got in your toolkit, with 3 different types of film and black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really got nothing else to say about it. I think it's just an absolute work of... It's just a masterclass. It's a work of absolute genius, because you don't go, who's the guy who did this? You say, who's the team who created all of this and put it all together, because it is a team effort. It's a collaborative effort. It's Tarantino, like you always said, if you want to make a film, you don't need to know what a 16mm lens does.
Yeah.
You don't need to know what costume design is. You just need to find someone who can do it, and you need to tell them how to do it. He's a master of telling them how to do it, and Robert Richardson is a master of listening and then delivering how to do that, the same as everybody else on this crew. And for me, that's the thing that sticks out, because that's the thing that I'm attracted to most, making visuals, seeing beautiful cinematography. And every time I watch this, it just takes me breath away. Just, every single shot works, every single scene works, every single frame is a masterpiece. It's beautiful.
It is. I think this is one of the most incredible looking films you could see. Maybe Tarantino's best looking. And it's across the board. We talked about the production design, the costume design, which is next level. And Robert Richardson matches it.
Yeah.
The way they capture that golden California look, full of nostalgia. It's like being inside a memory sometimes rather than watching a film. And it's the way he handles, like you're saying, Westy, the shifts in visual styles. Beautiful wide shots of Spawn Ranch 1 minute, and then gritty 16mm looking footage for Bounty Law the next.
Yeah.
The driving shots are amazing. I love the recurring shots from the rig positioned on the back of someone's car. There's a few of those. They remind me of a Clockwork Orange, but that's kind of from the front. Loads of crane shots. There's loads more, and it all immerses you kind of in the world. A world that sadly doesn't exist anymore. Like those shots in the third act of the neon signs of bars and cinemas coming on one by one at dusk.
Yeah. That's Cinerama as well. It's not there anymore. That's beautiful.
Brilliant, It feels like they're kind of preserving something that's gone. I mean, the obvious thing might have been to go full retro, like film grain, desaturation, but Richardson gives us this kind of vivid vibrancy that feels both real and heightened at the same time somehow, which I guess is nostalgia. I mean, nostalgia usually lives inside our heads, but Robert Richardson captures it on the screen as well as anything I've seen.
Yeah.
So it's pure eye candy. It's a feast. As visual storytelling as well, that enhances the themes around like fading glory and changing times. I think Richardson's work here is possibly his best with Tarantino.
Yeah, it's just so cinematic. I don't think I've seen another film with this amount of crane shots where every single one of them is stunning. Like the way it constantly pulls back to reveal the Hollywood Hills and the landscape, like I say, all bathed in that incredible sunlight, which then contrasts so well to the dead of night in the final act and how dark that is. As we've been saying, the way the camera moves in those scenes where Cliff is weaving his way through traffic at high speed, but then the way it does move in the Spawn Ranch, because the stillness of the frame winds up the tension instead. The way it captures like the emptiness at the edge of the frame. Every choice works. And also, just again to mention the production design and the costumes, because the colours just pop off the screen here. It's so resplendent.
Reminds me of Pulp Fiction in that way a bit, where it kind of looks Technicolor without being Technicolor at times.
It's got that vibe to it, I think what Tarantino said to Richardson as well is like, I want to preserve what's on the screen. I want to preserve the feeling of Hollywood, but I also want to preserve how important it is to capture it on film. And I want people to see how beautiful a 35mm negative can look, because this is my personal print, so I want the print to be as good as the film. Do you know what I mean? So he's even paying homage to like what it's printed on, which is why it looks so good.
Yeah, it's a love letter through and through, isn't it?
So on top of that, Richardson said Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one of the most complex films he shot, as we've said, due to Tarantino wanting to create an authentic look. They shot mainly on 35mm film. They were going to shoot on 70mm, like the shot Hateful Eight, but there's too many crash zooms, which is nigh on impossible to do on 70mm. Too difficult. So they went 35mm, but it still looks massive. It still looks like 70. And they also shot Super 8, which was popular format in 1969. And for the black and white TV scenes, they used 16mm Ektachrome film to recreate the look of the 1960s television, which is a really contrasty film. It looks great.
Yeah, he's won multiple Oscars, Robert Richardson, but he said one of the highlights of his career was the Musso and Frank Grill scene where he shot Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Pacino and Brad Pitt all within the same frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some content for your shot, isn't it?
Yep, right.
Absolutely.
He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Cinematography for his work on the film, Robert Richardson. Do you remember what won that year?
1917 won that year. I remember that. It was Deakins.
It was your man, Westy, Roger Deakins, for 1917.
Yeah.
But again, some brilliant work from Robert Richardson here for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, in hindsight, he should have got the Oscar, I think.
Oof.
Big call.
So Tarantino was a visionary at the helm as always, but he had some exceptional talent backing him up, mostly himself. His own screenplay and carefully curated soundtrack are great, and in Robert Richardson's golden age cinematography, it's a 1960s Hollywood love-in across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The end.
The third and final act of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sees Tarantino shifting gears and driving us towards his alternate history climax. The infamous night at Cielo Drive where everything changes is coming, but first, we're off to Spawn Ranch for some family time.
You could call it that.
So, after a couple of near run-ins between Cliff and Pussycat, he finally picks her up and takes her back where she came from, and that's somewhere he's familiar with, Spawn Movie Ranch.
Yeah.
Like so much else, though, things have changed. A bunch of goddamn hippies have taken over. Tensions are rising, Westy. How does Spawn Ranch go for you?
I think it's a wonderful sequence. In this sequence, there's too many bare feet for me.
Everyone.
Everyone. Especially when it cuts that sitting room and they're all watching TV and it's all just feet. That was my worst nightmare. It's my worst
Stinks,
nightmare.
doesn't it?
It looks manky. Just put some socks on or some slippers on or something. Just, you might have to go out some sandals or something. Just something. It's just too many. It's just, it stinks in there. It's like a horror film. Again, it shows the great transition from old Hollywood to new Hollywood, that this place is dying, that the hippies are taking over, that there's no more westerns, and it's really good character development for Cliff here, because we didn't really get any emotional insight into who he is. We know he cares about Rick, of course he does, but he actually takes his time here to go and check on George.
Yeah.
Does he still live there? Oh, he's asleep. Well, I'll just go and see for myself. And he knows he can look after himself. He knows he can kind of take these people out. But still, for us, because we know the Manson family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what he's getting into, and he doesn't. He could die here.
Yeah.
He's a secondary character. We could lose him here easily. But Tarantino plays this with so much tension, so much in the frame, so wide. It's very Hitchcockian when he's walking up to that house. It's very psycho. It's very and then it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre all of a sudden. It's all very strange. And then we're just talking about George is asleep through there. You still don't believe her.
Yeah.
Great from Dakota Fanning as well. I think she's wonderful in this.
Yeah.
And he gets through, and then there's that shot when he opens the door. That lighting, the way Richardson lights that, is just outrageous because it looks dingy, but it's beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's just in the bed there. And I think it's really great from Bruce Dern here as well. It's like he comes from nowhere and absolutely nails it. And he nails it again like he did in Django. He just kind of, he sits there, and it's not a very kind of Bruce Dern performance, but it really elevates the sequence because he's just frustrated and he's given up and he's let them take over. And Cliff just cannot understand why. He's like, what are you doing here? He said, well, I can't see anymore. And again, that's just a nod to old Hollywood not being on television. Nobody's seeing it. It's all gone. You're not going to be able to watch this anymore. So his eyesight's gone. Again, a great nod to it. And then when he comes out and leaves, great tracking shot with everybody in the background. Everyone's turned on him now. He was cool. He was talking about hitting police. He was talking about being a cool guy. Charles is going to like you. Maybe if he'd met Charles and he hadn't been there, and he met him first, it might have been different. But again, it's just this great build of tension that's just right underneath the surface. And it boils and boils and boils to the point when he gets back to that car and there's a knife in there. I love that. Would you do this? And he's just
He's awful.
He's horrible. But it's like every chopper in a metro station, and like when you get up to the last metro, and they just look at you and they go, you say, oh God, I wish I had like the guts to sort this out.
Yeah.
And he does. It's just absolutely wonderful. To be laces them all over. But it's violent, but it's not Tarantino level of violence yet. It's not shocking violence. It's still quite palatable. It's quite nice that you can tell it's a bit fake. It's a bit stuntman violence, a bit old Hollywood violence, I guess. and Tex coming back and him just driving away just in time. It's like, right, they've avoided it. And that, when he drives away, it's like, to me, was like this bombshell for the ending. It's like, oh my God, they've avoided it now. What on earth's going to happen later on?
Yeah.
There's going to be retribution for this. This is all going to come back and bite them on the arse. Great definition of Cliff's character. Great set of attention. It ends beautifully the way he drives away. But again, to get to that point is just, it is tough to get through, but it's fantastically done.
I think it's like a masterclass in tension building.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this in the cinema, you could hear a pin drop for the whole sequence. I think most people would be out there in a flash. Rick, you wouldn't see him for dust, but it works perfectly there. It's Cliff. I totally buy that he'd go to the house to check George is there.
Yeah.
And the tension as he's heading up there is like through the roof.
Yeah.
We have Paul Revere and the Raiders again. Mr. Sun, Mr. Moon plays on the TV as Cliff moves towards George's room. It's perfect for that moment. And at that point, we've no idea. George could be fine. He could be not there at all. He could be a skeleton in the bed. It's like Schrodinger's cat or something. Yeah. And Bruce Dern as George is always a treat, obviously, where he's like, it's Cliff Booth. John Wilkes Booth? What? And the tension doesn't drop until we see Cliff drive away, but somehow it's still funny without bursting the bubble of tension, which is really impressive from Tarantino, I think. It's funny when Pussycat's hands on hips like, he's napping. It's nap time.
Yeah.
But the highlight for me is definitely Cliff beating the crap out of Steve Grogan, one of the family's murderers. Yeah. Any time one of the Manson clan gets a kicking is a treat. Yeah. And the girls are all like heartbroken as well.
I know.
Yeah.
But this is one of Tarantino's great sequences for me.
Completely agree. One of the elements I love about this film is how it can change tone so quickly, and particularly on this day that the events are happening, because you've got the comedy of Rick on Lancer, the charm of Sharon in the cinema, and then Cliff on Spawn Ranch, which is, for me, the closest Tarantino's come to making a horror film. And I've always said a way you can tell a horror movie is working is if the scenes in broad daylight are just as scary as the nighttime scenes, and that is absolutely true of this. That slow realisation that Cliff is very much outnumbered, he's miles from anywhere, it's deadly silent, and no one knows where he is. Yeah, it's just your stomach sinks when all that starts to like hit you. Like, he's in so much trouble here and he doesn't realise it. I'd agree with Westy, the inside the shack, it is like something from Texas Chainsaw. Yeah. And then that shot of the Mansons just slowly coming out of the shadows of the various buildings, it's so unnerving. And I also think it's Pitt's finest moment in the film, because Cliff, he never loses his cool and he faces everyone down because he can't, but all the same, you can tell his hackles are raised and he wants to get the hell out of Dodge. I'd agree. I think it's one of Tarantino's very best scenes. It's one of the best before there were famous scenes I think you'll ever see. Yeah. Like Margaret Qualley, Sidney Sweeney, Austin Butler, and Mikey Madison, all in the same scene. Yeah. It's insane.
The real Spawn Ranch was owned by George Spahn, who had been used by Hollywood as a Western movie set in the 40s and 50s, but a fire destroyed all the old film sets in 1970. Tarantino said he wanted an exact replica to be created, but also wanted to feel like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as we've said. Yeah. Barbara Ling found a location 20 minutes from the real ranch, and her team recreated it from old photographs.
Yeah, so George Spahn let the Manson family move in 1968 in exchange for doing labour and sexual favours, apparently. Right. He was about 80 at the time, George Spahn.
Wow.
But in terms of the film, just when you think the production design couldn't get any better, we get to Spawn Ranch. It's some creation, that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As we've said, George Spahn is played by Bruce Dern, but the first person cast was Burt Reynolds. He attended script readings but passed away before filming started. Tarantino said the last thing Reynolds was doing before he died was learning his lines as George.
That would have been brilliant, that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Reynolds would have been incredible.
Yeah.
And Bill Paxton, he was supposed to play James Stacey from Lancer, but when he passed away, Timothy Olyphant was cast. I'd love to have seen Paxton in there as well,
I'd love to see Paxton, yeah.
And Bruce Lee's line to Cliff saying, "You're pretty for a stuntman," that apparently came from Burt Reynolds. It was his idea.
So the Mansons, as we see them in the film, are all based on real family members. And some of the main ones are Charles Manson, obviously. He was played by Damon Herriman, and Lena Dunham, who plays Catherine Gypsy Cher.
Yeah, Damon Herriman was cast because he'd also played Manson in Mindhunter.
Mindhunter, yeah.
David Fincher's crime series.
That's right, yeah.
Of all the people to be typecast as.
I know.
Bloody hell.
That's it now. No more roles for you.
And Pussycat is played by Margaret Qualley, who we've been talking about, and based on two Manson family members, Ruth Ann Moorhouse and Catherine Lutzinger, and she was known as Kitty Cat.
Yeah, apparently Moorhouse would lure men back to Spawn Ranch a bit like Pussycat does in the film.
Right.
I think she's really good, Margaret Qualley.
Yeah, she's great.
That lip bite she does a couple of times. It's
Yeah,
kind of became her
yeah.
trademark, that.
It has,
Yeah,
yeah.
it has, yeah.
And Jennifer Lawrence actually auditioned to play Lynette Squeaky Fromm, but lost out to Dakota Fanning. And Sydney Sweeney plays Diane Snake Lake.
Yeah, apparently Squeaky was given that nickname because of the noise she'd make when George Spahn touched her, which is more than I ever wanted to know.
Oh, could have done with leaving that out, to be honest, John. Really good.
Sorry, guys.
And Snake was the youngest family member. She was only 14 when she joined the Mansons.
And then Victoria Pedretti, she plays Leslie Van Houten, nicknamed Lulu, and James Landry Herbert plays Stephen Clem Morgan.
So apparently Macaulay Culkin auditioned for a part,
Right.
which I
Right.
presume must have been Clem. Imagine
Right.
Cliff beating the hell out of Macaulay Culkin.
Amazing.
Ladies.
Loads of traps.
There's others in the family as well that we'll talk about shortly. But how mad is it seeing all these people who weren't well known at the time but who've gone on to
Yeah.
be like huge stars? That
Yeah.
shot early on from Cliff's POV when the bus pulls away and suddenly reveals Margaret Qualley and Sydney Sweeney sitting there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But because he's got all these great actors playing the Mansons, it gives them kind of a charisma as well. It makes sense that
Does.
young people would have been pulled into it all, which they were,
Yeah.
obviously, at the time.
Yeah.
And they all have
Yeah.
their own kind of characteristics as
They
well,
do.
which makes them individuals as part of
Yeah.
the family.
Yeah,
It's-
it does.
They've got an individuality to them.
Yeah, you want to see kind of more of it, don't you?
Yeah. Well, no, but yeah.
Don't hear the squeaking.
No.
Well,
definitely
no.
not. Tarantino and the casting director Victoria Thomas devised a unique audition process to cast the Mansons. They encouraged the actors to improvise and create art that the Mansons might have made. Mikey Madison, who plays Susan Atkins, now an Oscar winner, created a painting and wrote a poem about Charles Manson. She said she knew she had the part because when she went for the callback, her painting was hanging up in Tarantino's office. Massive.
Cool move, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would be brutal if he didn't cast her after that. I'm keeping the painting, but you can go.
Painting was class.
He probably swapped it for everyone's painting and everyone who went back in. Which one's that? Just hang it up, she'll take the part.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Victoria Thomas does deserve a mention for this incredible casting.
Yeah.
And Ariane Phillips dressed the Mansons based on real photographs from the time. So this must be pretty much how Spawn Ranch and the Mansons looked based
Yeah.
on the recreations.
I would never have said that ranch was a recreation. That looked
No,
old
I
as
wouldn't have
time.
felt so either. Yeah.
That's Spawn Ranch and a real introduction to the Mansons. We've not seen the last of them just yet, though, have we?
Nope.
Unfortunately not.
We've arrived. The climax where the Mansons turn up.
Yeah.
Tarantino mixes things up, though. The family arrive on Cielo Drive, but instead of targeting Sharon Tate's house, they go after Rick's after recognising him for playing Jay Cahill. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they picked the wrong house on the wrong night. Cliff and Brandy are waiting.
Yep.
What were we so worried about, Matt? It all turns out fine, doesn't it?
God, exactly. And like the first time you see this, the way the tension just rears its head, it's so effective because it's been such a lark up until now. You're just hanging out with Rick and Cliff.
Yeah.
And then you feel you just brought back down to earth with a very big bump, that realisation of shit, this is that night with these people. And we all know what happened. Which therefore makes that sense of relief when you realise where he's taken this now and they've got it wrong. It's so effective. And you can relax because you think, oh, thank God, he's not going there. And what I get from this is a sense of genuine kind of anger from Tarantino. He really wishes this had happened. He really
Don't we
hates
all?
these people. Well, we all do, obviously, but you can tell he almost takes it personally. And it is kind of uncomfortable seeing this violence being dished out to them, but it's also kind of funny at the same time. The fact that Cliff is tripping out of his mind. So does he even think any of this is real? Does he know what's going on?
I think that's the point, isn't it? Because it's not supposed to be real.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's that contrast of the danger he's in, but how funny he thinks it is. Like, you were on a horsey. Nah, it was dumber than that. Yeah, really funny. I love the payoff with Brandy. You can see, we've seen earlier, she's controlled with just a hand movement and then the click of his tongue. And you just think, yes, this is great. This is what they deserved. But if I could go back in time and see a film again for the first time with no prior knowledge, it might be this one, just for that scene of Rick striding out of the garage with the flamethrower.
So funny. in the
First
cinema.
time I saw this, I lost it for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I was just helpless with laughter. So the whole thing, it could be ridiculous, but it works so well because underneath the OTT violence and the dark comedy, there's a genuine honesty to this. You think, yeah, this is how it should have gone down, and I really wish it could have done.
Yeah, I like the way they build up to the night with the montage and Kurt Russell narrating where everyone is and what time it is.
Yeah,
that works
that's
really
brilliant.
well.
Yeah.
Builds up this sense of dread because we think we know what's coming.
Yeah.
And somehow, still funny, Rick's in a film called Kill Me Quick Ringo, said the gringo. Ridiculous. Really funny when the Mansons first turn up and the car's making a racket and Rick looks out the window when he's like, bunch of goddamn fucking hippies.
Yeah.
And then storms out in his tiny robe. Mary Quant. I love the whole thing, and there's more than I can talk about. But I'm a huge fan of the Mansons talking in their car at the bottom of Cielo Drive.
Yes, I'm a massive
Yeah.
fan of that. Yeah.
Austin Butler's text where he's like, he either said that or I'm a liar. You calling me a liar? He's fantastic, as always. And how good is Mikey Madison as Susan Atkins?
Unbelievable.
She's a charisma volcano.
Yeah,
William
already.
Shatner.
Yeah.
No surprise, she went on to be an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then You Keep Me Hanging On by Vanilla Fudge kicking in as the Mansons
Great
approach the
version of
door.
that. Yeah.
That's a needle drop and a half. And just about every other filmmaker in the world would surely have done a parallel editing trick like Silence of the Lambs, had us thinking the Mansons were at Sharon's door, and it turns out it's Rick's. Cuties
Yeah.
above all that, though. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is what we all wish had happened, obviously, when these bastards turned up. I'm not entirely sure why Rick turns Atkins into fried sauerkraut when he's got no idea what's going on.
No, he doesn't.
But I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a wonderful sequence, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah.
I was watching this thinking, first time I'd seen it, I was waiting for this moment to happen. And then when it did happen, I just thought to myself, the first thing I thought to myself was, this is a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
Now, this is a Quentin Tarantino film because nobody else could even touch this to the degree of how acceptable this violence is. And none of us have really touched about on how violent this really is.
Massively.
It's
Yeah.
fucking horrendous. If
It
you
is,
watch
yeah.
it just stood alone, I watched this sequence. Hitting her head off the fireplace, off the table, and it's just the
Again and
corner
again
of
and
the fire,
again.
and it's bang,
Yeah.
bang,
Yeah,
bang.
yeah.
A tin of dog food in her face, smashes her nose in. A dog ripping his balls off, basically,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
rips her into bits, and it's just pulling her all over the place. It's horrendous violence. But you're there for it, like John just said. You're there for it. Somebody's set on fire in a swimming pool, like set on fire. You can tell it's real. It's all in camera. It's horrendous, and we'll stay on it.
Yeah.
And we'll see the corpse, and we're quite happy to see the corpse.
Yeah.
And the camera just holds on it and goes down. You're like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah.
And you're quite happy to see all of this violence play out. And I think that's Tarantino just basically giving the finger to any single person who sat in an interview with him. Now, any critic and just said his movies are too violent. Because they're going to be punching the sky at the moment that this happens, watching this film.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
going to be going, is it too violent now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanted
Yeah.
this to happen? You were happy this is happening? You're happy it's this violent? You're happy we can do this in cinema, aren't you? And they're going, well, yeah, actually. Yeah, no matter how much you hate violence, you're going to love the end of this film.
Yeah.
Which is really, really Quentin Tarantino for me. The minute that Cliff walks away with Brandy and just holds that shot, and then the car comes on.
Oh, it's great.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, that's tension again.
Yeah.
And like you said, just Rick making margaritas. I can't get more of that. I can't get any more of it. Just shaking it. He just wants it now. And just drinking it straight out of the mixer as he's walking back is wonderful. And he's just singing. It's just great. They're just like, well, where's Rick going to be in all of this? Of course, he's just going to be in the pool listening to music. Of course he is. And you don't know the reason that he set her on fire. The reason it probably is because he's dropped his tape player into the pool, then she's ruined his tape player, and that's worthy of taking her out. And he's had a margarita and he's had enough of these hippies.
Had enough of these hippies,
It's just because she's a hippie, basically, and he's just built that up all the way through the film. Fantastic sequence, fantastic ending. I can't get enough of it, but I can't watch it by itself. I need them other 2 hours, 10 minutes to really, really make us appreciate how good this sequence is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, as we know, Tarantino changed his history here, but there are still a lot of references to the real events that transpired. Firstly, don't worry, we're not that type of podcast. We're not going into any detail on the brutal and horrific stuff that happened.
Yeah, because it is genuinely horrific. Not the kind of thing you expect to hear on a movie podcast, so we'll leave that.
It's not going to happen.
It's beyond awful. So, on the day, though, Sharon is visited by her friend Joanne, who brings her baby. This is Joanna Pettet, a British actress who was Sharon's friend and did visit her on that day. And she's played by Rumu Willis in the film, who is daughter of Demi Moore and Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Nice. She was in the original Casino Royale, Joanne Pettet. Also, apparently, Deborah Tate, who we talked about, she called Sharon that day and wanted to visit her that night, but Sharon said no because she was having friends over. So, grateful for small mercies. A 16-year-old could have been there.
Lucky escape, yeah.
And Steve McQueen.
Yeah, well, I wish he was there.
He just sorted them out. Yeah. And the car the Mansons turn up in was a recreation of their real Ford Galaxy. Stephen Butcher was the picture car coordinator, and he was given access to the Mansons' car and recreated it right down to having the same dents.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, the truck from FBI, the show that Rick's in. Butcher got his hands on the very truck from that episode of FBI, so it's the real thing that we see.
I love that episode of FBI.
It's great.
It's great. Brad Pitt's voiceover. I love that shot. Kill number 2.
I don't think we've talked about a picture car coordinator before either, but you kind of have to on this.
Yeah.
He did a pretty good job.
And the 4 Manson family members are the same 4 that went to Sharon's. So Charles Tex Watson, Susan Sadie Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, played by Madison Beatty, and Linda Kasabian, played by Maya Hawke, daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, Linda Kasabian was the only one who didn't go to jail for the murders. Apparently she did try to stop them on the night and then testified against the others afterwards to put them away.
That's right.
So that's why Tarantino has her drive away in the car, presumably.
Right.
And there were 4 people inside Sharon's house who were killed by the Mansons. Sharon, Jay Sebring, played by Emil Hirsch, Abigail Folger, played by Samantha Robinson, and Wojtek Frykowski, played by Costa Ronan. But there was also a 5th victim. Stephen Parent was sitting outside Sharon's house when the Mansons turned up, and Charles Watson shot him.
Yeah, there's no reference to him in the film at all, Stephen Parent. But Abigail Folger was daughter of Peter Folger of the Folger Coffee Company. She was pretty well known at the time as well, apparently.
We also see Abigail at the piano singing Straight Shooter by the Mamas and Papas, and this is because when the police arrived the next day, they found the sheet music to the song on the piano.
And Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas apparently had a thing with Polanski when he was with Sharon, which I guess is why she's at the Playboy party near the start.
Wojtek Frykowski, he did sleep on the couch like shown in the film, and he was walking by Charles Watson pointing a gun in his face. When he asked who he was, Watson said, "I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's business," which is a line Tex says in the film.
Butler's delivery of it is excellent, but terrifying when you know that's what he really said.
And then the following night, with the 10th of August, the Mansons went to the home of a businessman called Leno LaBianca and murdered him and his wife Rosemary. It was the same 4, plus Leslie Van Houten, played by Victoria Pedretti in the film, and Manson himself. Linda Kasabian said Manson wanted to show them how it was done.
Well, for that, Manson and the 4 family members went to prison in 1971. 4 of them were never released, and Leslie Van Houten was released after 53 years. Was it worth it to be evil bastards for a couple of days?
So back to some nicer stuff then. You know, the creativity behind the film. Let's just get back to the podcast.
Yeah,
that's
yes,
nice.
please.
Yeah, because he changed it, Tarantino left the ending out of the script that he gave to people. The only people apart from Tarantino who knew from the start what would happen were Tarantino, DiCaprio, Pitt and Robbie. And Robert Richardson didn't even know until like midway through production to allow him to prepare for it. He didn't know until I've got to prep for the end. What happens?
I think he also let Roman Polanski's representative read the ending, which I mean that's the bit he's going to be concerned about, so you kind of have to, I think.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And there's a couple of other actors with ties to Tarantino who show up in smaller roles. Rick's Italian actress wife, Francesca Capucci. I love it when Kurt Russell says her name.
Yeah, it's great.
She's played by Lorenza Izzo, and she's the wife of Eli Roth, famously one of Tarantino's filmmaker buddies.
All right.
And the girl who sells Cliff the cigarette dipped in acid for 50 cents, that's Perla Haney Jardine, and she played Bibi, the bride's little girl, in Kill Bill Volume 2. Yep.
And away we go.
That's great.
Nice.
Cliff's off his box when the Mansons turn up. You can't even put the lights on.
No, it's amazing.
Just laughing at
dog food.
It's when he tries the dog food. He's really tempted.
Yeah, he's tempted.
Yeah, he is.
And then it's all over. Cliff leaves in the ambulance. Francesca just goes back to bed somehow. And we get Rick left alone for the final moments. What do we think of the denouement, Matt?
I find it very, very poignant, and not just because Rick has been accepted as a real hero and he's in the Hollywood circle now, but because this is how that night should have ended. And the tragic thing is, we all know how it did, and the music suddenly becomes very melancholic and gentle. You get another one of those incredible crane shots, and I just think it's so notable. It's only now we get the title on screen, because sadly, this is only a fairy tale. I think this moment is the most heartfelt thing Tarantino's ever done.
Wow.
And in terms of his punchline for changing history, this lands 1,000 times better than it did in Inglourious Bastards.
I love it as a final scene. It's funny when Jay asks Rick if everyone's okay, and Rick's like, well, the hippies aren't. That's for goddamn sure. We end with the crane shot swimming over Cielo Drive, obviously, as we have to, and it's one of the best ones. We get Miss Lily Langtry by Maurice Shaw playing us out, then the logo comes over the screen. It is perfect way to end, except for one thing.
Okay.
So Rick's standing there alone on the drive. He has hello off screen, turns round to see Jay Sebring at the gate.
Yeah.
Why, oh why, is that not Sharon standing there? I cannot fathom it. As a storytelling choice, we've not seen them together. The whole thing's been set up since the first act, and the dialogue doesn't even need to change. Sharon going, oh, the flamethrower from 14 Fists of McCluskey. How awesome would that be? I said this about the end of Inglourious Bastards, and the only reason I can think of is that Tarantino's done it to piss me off. It's mad. Or am I wrong? Is it better this way, Westy?
I don't know. I think it's good that she's on the intercom and she's asking what's happening from the safety of a house, and he's coming out to try and play the big guy and find out what's wrong. She's heavily pregnant.
Yeah.
You know, she's staying inside. She's got guests. She's entertainment. She's always the entertainer. She wants to find out who's there. And when she finds out it's all right, she invites that in. She invites the happiness in. She can't go out if there's something bad happening. She's not part of that, never has been in the film. So for her to investigate something that was that could be bad news, that's not her character to do, and never has been throughout this film or throughout this fairy tale, really.
It does make more sense he'd be the one that goes out. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's just seeing them together. We kind of need it, don't we?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
We do, though, get another scene where DiCaprio and Robbie share the screen. On the flight back from Italy, Rick is served a cocktail by his stewardess at one point. We only see her arms and hear her say, enjoy, sir. But that's Margot Robbie.
Yeah, she made a name in America playing an air stewardess on a TV show called Pan Am, Margot Robbie. So with all the references to TV in the film, I guess that's why they did it, which is a nice touch, if so.
Makes sense, yeah.
And with that, we fade to black and an end credit sequence featuring Rick advertising Red Apple cigarettes. So we are in the Tarantino-verse.
Here we are.
And Rick punches his cardboard cutout. I've got a double shit.
These cigarettes taste like shit.
As for the climax of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino flips things on its head and gives us the fairy tale we wish we'd got.
Absolutely, 100%.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Reception and awards.
So that's the tale behind the fairy tale, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood opened in cinemas on July the 26th, 2019. As for how it performed, well, our own Hollywood historian Matt is here to tell us.
Okay, so production budget of about $90 million. The film took $392.1 million globally, so a huge hit. And it did do well at the Oscars. It was nominated for 10 overall, winning 2, which, as we've said, Brad Pitt for Best Supporting Actor and Barbara Ling and Nancy Hay for Best Production Design. I mean, so well deserved that one.
Well deserved, yeah.
As we should have, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing for Best Picture Car Coordinator for Stephen Butcher.
He'd have been good at the Picture Car Coordinator Awards, yeah. To promote the film in the run-up to its release, Tarantino curated and presented a swinging 60s movie marathon.
Of course he did.
Films that influenced Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was broadcast on TV in 80 countries and was a selection of Columbia Pictures classics. It included Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, Easy Rider and The Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew, of course. An Easy Rider, Rick calls text Dennis Hopper, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. That's really funny. Hey, Dennis Hopper, get out of here.
However, China refused to give the film a certificate rating, meaning couldn't be released there. And they said the reason was the depiction of Bruce Lee in the film, and said that if Tarantino took the scene out entirely, they'd give the film a certificate. Obviously, Tarantino refused, so the film didn't release in Chinese theatres.
Yeah, I think Shannon Lee raised the original complaint, and I wonder if that's why Tarantino kind of made amends in the novelisation like we talked about. He accepted
possibly.
the portrayal of Bruce Lee could have been a bit better, maybe.
Yeah.
Onto the critics then. Rick Dalton's nemesis, to see what they thought of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
We'll start with Roger, of course. The score from RogerEbert.com. What do you think?
I'm going to go pretty high end. This is a love letter to cinema. These guys love cinema, so I'm going to say he saw it before we did and gave it, well, they saw it before we did and give it high praise, so I'm going to go full marks for that one.
I'll go 3.
You're right, Westy. 4 stars out of 4.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Brian Tallarico said, layered and ambitious, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the product of a confident filmmaker working with collaborators completely in tune with his vision. I think a lack of confidence has never been a problem for Quentin, has it?
No, definitely not. Couldn't do it by himself. He's confident in the video store, for fuck's sake.
Peter Travers of Rolling Stone gave very close to top marks, 4.5 out of 5, and said, all the actors in roles large and small bring their A-games to the film. 2 hours and 40 minutes can feel long for some. I wouldn't change a frame. And Empire Magazine gave the film 4 stars out of 5, with Ian Freer saying, if it's not top draw QT, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is at once an engaging buddy comedy, an intoxicating fact and fiction mashup, gorgeous filmmaking, and a Valentine to the movies that delivers geek nirvana. All these films are that a bit, though, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on Rotten Tomatoes today, the film has a big 86% critics' approval rating, and it may be surprising 70% from audiences. Does feel a bit low. But then on IMDb, 7.6 out of 10.
As far as audiences are concerned, it's the lowest rated QT film on Rotten Tomatoes.
It is very divisive, though. It's what we said at the start.
Wow.
You love it or you love it. I hate it. There's no middle ground with this whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a success on its release. Big returns at the box office, straight in Quentin's back pocket. Pretty much unanimous critical acclaim. Not so much from audiences or China, maybe, but still, done okay on the whole.
Certainly did.
If they got a chance to see it, I think it would have been different.
Sequels and influence.
There were no sequels to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's unlikely there ever will be. However, that hasn't stopped our patrons fantasising about one.
Oh, nice.
Time for our third and final ATRM Patreon question, and it comes from Tim Brusculier.
Hello, Tim.
Hello, Tim.
So Tim says, QT would never do a sequel, but the ATRM boys are another story. That's true enough, Tim.
Yes, we are.
Using Rick, Cliff and Sharon, what real-life event of the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. would you have them revise in the sequel? And Tim says, thank you for making me healthy. I always found walking and running boring, but when I became a patron and had access to all that material, I haven't missed a day in 18 months. Become a patron, get healthy.
There you go.
Running every day
That's
for
all you
18
need.
months. Forrest
Wow.
Gump.
Forrest Gump. I just felt like being a patron.
And Tim's like our PR guy with that praise. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, too right, yeah.
But Matt, any sequel ideas?
So what I would do for sequel is I'd have Rick decide that he wants to embark upon a music career, better than the Green Door he does early on in the film. And he wants to spare no expense, so he relocates to London, 1970, Abbey Road. Cliff is obviously along for the ride. Sharon's there doing backing vocals.
Nice.
And when they're there, they see all the tension that's going on between the Beatles. And they just sort it out. Rick takes Paul and John out, teaches them the value of friendship. So, let George have some more songs.
Yeah.
Cliff tells George, I know what it's like to be overshadowed all the time, but your moment to shine will come. And then he just reminds Ringo, he's Ringo fucking Starr. And Sharon, she takes Yoko on a girls' weekend away, so she's not hanging around causing tension.
Yeah, chills her out.
Chills her out, so there you go. They stop the Beatles breaking up. And because they tell them about the Manson family, John and Yoko decide to live in London instead of moving to America. John Lennon
Lovely.
lives.
Brilliant. That's awesome,
There you
Matt.
go. There you go. Who wouldn't want that?
I mean, Tim's right. Tarantino wouldn't do a sequel, but I'd love it if he did. More than probably any other film he's done. I'd love to see this LA again. I'd love to see these three characters again.
Yeah.
And if you are listening, QT, my idea, it's not as good as Matt's, to be fair, but mine's a trilogy. So 3 films where we move through part of Hollywood history and like US culture with Rick, Cliff and Sharon. So film 1, obviously, we've got New Hollywood, counterculture, the Mansons, great. Film 2, 5 to 10 years later, mid to late 70s, and now Rick has to deal with the movie brats and the rise of the blockbuster. So
Right.
how does he fit into that? Spielberg's
Okay.
in there, Coppola's in there,
Obviously.
Scorsese. I'd love to see Tarantino's version of Lucas. And set to a backdrop of political activism, anti-Vietnam protests, the rise of feminism, Watergate maybe. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then film 3, the 80s, and more change for Rick to deal with. The rise of the action star. Arnold's in there, obviously.
Obviously.
The development of CGI, so Iron Jim's in there. The
Yeah.
advent of home video, Rick struggles against all these things, set to a backdrop of like consumerism evolving, the rise of MTV, and politically the end of the Cold War, Reaganism, the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then part 3 ends, early 90s, the arrival of Tarantino. playing himself.
Playing himself in the video store, obviously. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Elaborate this, like.
Yeah.
And it ends with Tarantino being to Rick like, "You're so perfect, I could have wrote you myself." And he casts Rick in a film about his own life called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Meta as hell. Tarantino finally devours himself like a snake, and we're done. The Tarantino trilogy.
Yeah, amazing.
And Westy?
So they're going to do another sci-fi film. So Polanski decides to do a sci-fi film. He decides to do the next 2001.
Nice.
So they get cast in it. So then Sharon gets to cast in it. She then brings Rick in because they've just met the night before. So it's kind of like a direct sequel, right? So it's like the next year they're going to make this. Cliff comes in as the stunt double, obviously. They need him part of it. They go training at NASA. So they all have to become astronauts, and they get training in that. And then they get mistaken for the Apollo 13 crew.
Right.
Nice, right, yeah.
And they end up in the shuttle. The shuttle takes off, but there's no problem.
Awesome.
Just land it, no problem.
I think we should do all these. These are all great.
Yeah,
Get a
all
series, a
great.
Netflix series.
Yeah.
10 episodes.
Just called Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time in NASA.
But Tarantino has actually talked about what happens to Rick after the events of the film. I mean, he obviously thought about this. And he said that after fighting off the Mansons, Rick's stock rose in Hollywood and he did have some success. He starred in a couple of low-budget studio features and became a bigger name on TV. He's not doing Land of the Giants or The Green Hornet anymore, but he's now on Mission Impossible as the bad guy and it becomes his episode. And Tarantino said, and he's going okay.
Apparently, Tarantino submitted a fake filmography for Rick to IMDb, and they declined it. Yeah, what the
How much time does he have on his hands? Far too much time in his hands.
He just goes all in, doesn't he? I love it.
He doesn't sleep.
As for the influence and legacy behind the film, though, how do we think we've seen the impact of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood since 2019?
I mean, we've seen it. I've definitely seen it. It wasn't long after it. But I think it owes more to its influences itself. You know, the likes of Easy Rider I've mentioned, Getting Straight, that Elliot Gould rom-com from 1970, which is fantastic. Arizona Raiders, the Western is great. Kiss the Girls and Make Them Die. Hammerhead, if you haven't seen them, they're fantastic. But after it, the only thing that's touched on it, that's come close to it, and it stars Pitt and Robbie. Can you guess what I'm going to say?
Yes.
Go on then.
Babylon.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that arcs back to the, you know, the golden era
Yeah,
of Hollywood.
that's really good,
And
yeah.
they really tried there. And you know what? Nobody else got it. But I absolutely fucking loved that
Oh, it's a
film.
great
I liked
film.
it as
Really
well, yeah.
underappreciated.
Absolutely brilliant and flew under the radar. It wasn't trying to be anything else. It wasn't trying to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
No.
at all.
No.
Trying to be
It
its
was
own
very
thing.
much off the ilk, and it was long, and it was flamboyant, and it was beautiful, and it was beautifully acted, really well directed by Chazelle, and flew under the radar. So if you want to see anything close to this, and you haven't seen Babylon, and you love cinema, but you want to see the genesis of it, go to that one, because this is kind of based before where this one came from. And for me, Babylon is the only thing that's close to this.
In terms of influence, I mean, it's not Pulp Fiction, is it? How could it be? But still, I think it has had an impact and an effect. I think it breathed new life into the period piece genre for a while, nostalgic without being overly sentimental. I mean, nostalgia now is a very powerful force across culture and especially in Hollywood. Constant reboots, reimaginings, films referencing previous films in the same series.
Yeah.
But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood shows filmmakers how to do that, how to do nostalgia and still be original. It showcased and honoured the films, TV shows, the music of that period without just doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
No doubt led to some people taking a new interest in that as well. And I think it definitely honours the memory of Sharon Tate in a respectful and nice way. If you're talking revisionist history storytelling in Hollywood, I think this is kind of the benchmark. And any future filmmakers who are thinking about rewriting real-life events will surely look upon Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to see how Tarantino did it.
Yeah, I had Babylon down as well. I think this and Wolf of Wall Street just before really propelled Margot Robbie into the big time where she is now, where she's an absolute A-lister.
Yeah.
But it's legacy for me. I just keep on thinking about that thing Tarantino keeps going on about how he only wants to make 10 films and then retire.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, he's already made 10 because Kill Bill is not one film, it was 2. I went to see it twice. I remember, Quentin. But more importantly, and who knows what he'll come up with, if he is intent on making one final film, I just can't imagine anything that will feel more like a full stop to his career than this. Like, if he is to retire, this is surely the perfect statement to retire on. There's like a sense of finality to this, a sense that he's saying something here that he's been building his entire career towards, and that's its legacy for me. In a way, it's the ultimate Tarantino statement. And if he does want to just end his career, end it on this.
Well, no sequels to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and unlikely there will be, but the legacy and influence of the film and its revisionist take on history, that may be seen in the work of other filmmakers.
Yeah. Definitely watch Babylon.
All the right movies ranking.
And we've completed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now it's time for the Tinseltown tally, where we each rate the film out of 10. Westy, your choice. So what do you think? Your summary and score for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, there was reason I put up this is just to talk about it again and to make sure that all of us were on the same page, which I know we are. But it was just to dive into it and to have it down and to say we've talked about it and talked about it with such adoration as we have. I didn't realise how divisive it was. I didn't realise there was people out there who it's his worst film, it's really self-indulgent, it's really pretentious. There's always an audience for that, and that's fine. But on the other side of the coin, there's always the audience for really appreciating that, really appreciating the honesty and how genuine the film is, how passionate it is, how wonderful it is. It ticks the boxes on every conceivable level for me. The acting's amazing, the writing's amazing. The crew, every single one of them, incredible. The casting is just a lesson. Everything works from start to finish. There's not a frame I would change. There's not a scene I would put differently. Nobody else could have made this film apart from Quentin Tarantino. It's completely original. It's completely fantastic. It's completely wonderful. It's a complete 10.
Oof, massive.
Oof, wonderful.
Yeah, it's Tarantino, isn't it? A unique talent.
It is a bit, yeah.
One of Hollywood's most distinctive voices for me. And I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is maybe him at his most personal. From the setting, his hometown in the period he grew up as a child, referencing all the music, the TV shows, the places that he knew, the character writing, it's there too. I think Tarantino sees a lot of himself in Rick, which is one part of the reason that character feels so rich and so alive.
Yeah.
The other reason for that is Leonardo DiCaprio at his brilliant best, as are the rest of the cast. Brad Pitt's performance for me, probably his best. Margot Robbie is a joy whenever she's on the screen, and the supporting A-list casting, Kurt Russell, Al Pacino and Bruce Dern, are fantastic. And another joy is in the what at the time was C-listed best actors playing the Mansons. All great, but Austin Butler and Mikey Madison both have standout moments for me.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. Robert Richardson, Barbara Ling, Nancy Haig delivered world-class visual work. This version of LA looks like a great place, and it even chews up and spits out the Manson family, which can only be a good thing. Not for everyone, I know, but it is in the top tier of Tarantino's work for me, and I'm going 9 out of 10.
Nice.
And Matt, to finish us off, your summary and score for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, please.
Very much like Westy, it was fascinating to see how divisive this is in the comments on the film because, yeah, as he said, some people say it's his best, some people say it's his worst. And I'm not staying on the fence, but I do get both sides of the argument for this one.
Yeah.
But I just think back to the first time I saw this and I felt so knocked out by it, particularly how unexpected and funny the ending is and how much of a relief it was. And it's never really dipped from there for me. I love the recreation of the period, from the soundtrack to the costume design. I'm just so happy to just hang out with these characters, particularly DiCaprio, I think, given maybe his most underrated performance. But above everything else, it's the genuine warmth and emotion I get from Tarantino here. And that together with the time period, the setting, what he's saying here, that's why this feels like the ultimate Tarantino film for me. The one where it feels like that's what he's been building towards his entire career and he's saying something. And to try and criticise his film, I'd be really nitpicking, and honestly, I can't. I genuinely just love this film. I'm on that side of the fence. This is also a 10 for me. I think it might be his best film.
Wowza.
Nice.
Hot takes from Matt.
Hot take, Rendon.
Yep.
Well, we also put this out there to our very own Manson family, our ATRM patrons.
Yep, that's them.
Yeah.
You're Charlie Manson, Matt. The Manson family.
Okay, that's fine.
Very nice.
So some of their thoughts. Liam Moore said, I've watched it more than any other QT film, and I love QT. I think it's his finest work. The time period, the subject matter, the soundtrack, and the stellar cast. When two cameo performances like Kurt Russell and Bruce Dern explode off the screen in a movie this great, it must be great. 10 out of 10, QT's magnum opus.
Nice.
He agrees with you, Matt.
Yeah.
It wasn't all positive, though. And Mark Shufflebottom said, overblown and self-indulgent. Nothing wrong with the performances, just too much filler, which the over-the-top ending can't overcome.
Right.
He wasn't alone in calling this self-indulgent, Mark. I do get that, but that
Totally
side
get
doesn't
it.
bother me.
Totally get it.
In fact, I quite like that,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah. I like the indulgency. Sometimes I don't with Tarantino. This one I do.
Yeah.
If it's unintentional self-indulgence, it's awful.
Yeah.
If it's intentional,
Yes.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Two Count Kyle said, it can be a tough watch if you're looking for typical structure and purpose-driven story, but if you just go with it, it's a great world to hang out in. One of DiCaprio's most enjoyable roles, him having a meltdown in his trailer, is worth the runtime alone.
It is.
Took a couple of watches to fully appreciate it, but it's undeniable fun, hilarious, batshit crazy, and full of characters that no one can do like QT. So positive leaning but mixed from our patrons, and altogether they rated the film as, what do you think out of 10?
8.
Yeah, it's going to be all over the place, so I think 8 is about fair.
It was 9 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Good score,
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to cast your vote and get your review read out, join the ATRM Patreon gang.
Yes.
Please do.
Right.
Yeah.
The Manson Family. Don't let that put you off, though. So in total, that gives Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 38 out of 40. Great score.
Nice.
And that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Hopefully it hasn't made you want to pick up any dumpster driving, hitchhiking hippies. If it has, take your flamethrower, just in case.
Just in case. Yeah.
Yeah, keep it in the boot.
Next time out, back and to the left, Luke, Westy and Matt are getting their conspiracy boards out as they talk Oliver Stone, Kevin Costner and JFK.
Oh, yeah.
More alternate history, possibly.
A little bit of it, probably. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
How will that one go?
I mean, it's going to be laid on very thick. It's very thorough, isn't it, Matt?
It's going to be massive. Do you know what it's going to be like? You know that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with Charlie in the whiteboard?
Yeah, it's just all.
And he's got the
that's
cigarette
gonna
going.
be me.
Yeah. It's going to be massive, that one.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, to find out more about becoming a patron, supporting what we do, and accessing our archive and bonus episodes, please visit patreon.com/alltherightmovies. You can also sign up on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Yep.
And whatever your streaming platform of choice, please leave a 5-star review for us, because that helps us out a lot.
It really does. Thank you, guys.
If you don't think we're worth 5 stars, that's fine. Just don't leave a review, please.
Yeah. It's one or the other.
Socially, you can keep up with All the Right Movies on Twitter or X, where we are at ATRightMovies. We post threads on there that tell the stories behind classic films, where everything we post has been said by somebody involved in the production or comes from 3 separate sources, which is the same as on our podcast. So go check that right out. We are on YouTube, like we said, youtube.com/alltherightmovies. On Instagram and Threads, we are at @all_the_right_movies. On Blue Sky, or at alltherightmovies.com. We have a movie group on Facebook, which is full of lots of great people and lots of great film chat, so you should go and join that.
You should.
And our website, which is full of great features and great articles, is at alltherightmovies.com.
Phew.
We're all off now to we're all off now to neck 8 whiskey sours and see what does really happen when Westy turns his camera off. Come back for JFK.
Just did before.
Sign up as an ATRM patron if you've not, and thanks for listening.
Yes, thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.